Roman slave owner. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 276. Crossing the river. The army slowly approached the royal city. At this time, a cavalryman ran over. "Report to your majesty. The enemy is leading a large army and is waiting on the other side of the Athanasius River." "How many people are there?" Tigranes asked hurriedly, looking at the flags. "It looks like 8 legions, and there are about 10,000 cavalrymen in addition." "Haha, I didn't expect there are less than 60,000 troops." "In this way, we will definitely win." Tigranes was overjoyed. "Your majesty, we should be careful and never underestimate the enemy," Alexander said hurriedly. Mithridates also had a serious face. He thought of his own dark history. Asia was said to have an army of 300,000, but was defeated by Levi. "What are you afraid of? Our number is 5 times theirs." "I don't believe we can defeat Levi with so many people." At this time, an Arab chief said, "What a bunch of cowards. I guess they are scared by Levi." Another chief laughed loudly. Mithridates and Alexander were so angry that they trembled all over. These guys were really hateful. "Okay, don't worry, you have to believe me. I am the king of kings," Tigranes said very confidently. After joining Mithridates' troops, he had more than 360,000 troops in his hands. He didn't believe that Levi could turn the tables. Everyone complimented Tigranes, which made Tigranes very comfortable. Mithridates and Alexander were very depressed. After Alexander was ridiculed for his advice again, he kept silent. "Forget it, now everything depends on God's will." Everyone led the army to the river and saw Levi's army waiting on the other side of the river from a distance. The whole army had flags flying in strict military discipline. It seems that they plan to rely on this river for defense. At this time, a chief said. Tigranes nodded. "That's right, but unfortunately they don't know that this river is very shallow and easy to wade through. They are doomed to lose this time." "Your majesty is wise. Let us congratulate you in advance on your victory." "Levi, you clown, how can you be your opponent?" Listening to the praises of the crowd, Tigranes laughed triumphantly. Just as they were looking at Levi, Levi was also looking at the army on the opposite side. "What kind of army is this? The uniforms are different, the armor is uneven, and some don't even have military flags. How do they plan to command the army? And the military formation is scattered." "No, there should be no military formation at all. It's understandable if you think about it. How can the army have strict military discipline in less than 3 months? If you use one word to describe it, it is a mob." He finally understood why Lucullus was able to defeat the enemy army. This is simply giving himself military merit. Thinking of this, Levi's uneasy heart immediately settled down. He glanced at the crowd and found that Lucullus's nervous expression had eased, and even Bullus had a look of contempt on his face. "General, I think we should order the army to attack immediately. The enemy's formation is scattered. As long as we disperse their army when they are not yet stable, we can win a great victory." Lucullus said at this time. "Isn't it too risky to attack now?" Bullus said. "No, now is the best time. Their army has not yet deployed, and the army is exhausted after coming from afar. Just one attack can defeat them," Livius said. Having said this, he immediately called the standard-bearing officer and ordered the entire army to attack. The passionate trumpets and bugles sounded, the military flags waved, and more than 50,000 Roman soldiers moved forward at the same time and began to force a crossing of the river. Tens of thousands of cavalry covered the 2 wings and prepared to attack the enemy. Tigranes and others looked at all this in shock. How dare they attack an army of 360,000? Yes, they must not know that they have such a terrible military force. It is precisely because of ignorance that they do such ridiculous things. "Quick, order the army to prepare to meet the enemy," Tigranes said. After all, he was a veteran of many battles. He quickly began to deploy his troops. The Adibn were arranged on the left wing, the Medes were arranged on the right wing, and the central army was his own troops. More barbarians had not even arrived at the battlefield. Seeing his deployment, Alexander couldn't help but frown. "Your Majesty, I think your heavy cavalry cannot be arranged behind the army, but should be sent out to attack the enemy's cavalry. Tigrane's face flushed. How could he not understand this? It's just that he thought the battle was already won, and wanted those miscellaneous soldiers and mercenaries to consume more enemies so as to preserve his own strength. I know, Tigrane said helplessly. Under the gaze of everyone, he had to order those heavy cavalry to move to a small hill, ready to threaten the enemy's flank at any time. After crossing the river, Levi immediately discovered the movement of the enemy's heavy cavalry. He knew that the enemy had heavy cavalry, so he was very afraid of these heavy cavalry. Levi called Lucullus, "You go and command those cavalry. Remember to keep an eye on the enemy cavalry. If they make any unusual movements, go up and entangle them immediately." Recently, Lucullus has been following him as a staff officer. After all, with such a famous general by his side, Levi can save a lot of trouble. Cavalry is the top priority in this battle. Among so many generals, Levi trusts Lucullus the most. "Yes, General," Lucullus said, and then he galloped towards the cavalry camp. "Tell all the soldiers to set up a tortoise shell formation, don't shoot arrows at the enemy, and quickly engage in close combat and use the short sword in your hand to destroy the enemy." Levi called the herald again and said, "If you want to defeat an enemy that far exceeds your number, you can only be fearless of casualties and quickly defeat the enemy in front of you. Otherwise, once they gain a foothold, the situation will be really bad." "Yes, General." One by one, the heralds rode on their war horses and galloped on the battlefield, conveying Levi's orders. The two armies were approaching each other quickly. At this moment, the heavy cavalry on the hill moved. They rushed down the hill like a tiger, and quickly reached high speed by using the conversion of potential energy. Lucullus led the cavalry to meet them. Seeing this, Levi was relieved, and he commanded the army to quickly approach the enemy. The two armies were about to come into contact, and a rain of arrows flew out from the enemy's central army formation. However, the tortoise-shell formation of the Roman army had no effect, except for a few people who were injured. They quickly approached the enemy. "Kill!" Caesar said loudly, and then commanded his own brigade to quickly kill the Medes in front. Chapter 277. The first person in history. Compared with the Armenians who were equipped with fine food, these people were much worse equipped. Many people were not equipped with armor, and even leather armor was not fully equipped. Compared with the Romans who were fully armored, they were completely at the same level. Their swords chopped on the Romans, but nothing happened. On the contrary, the Romans' short swords stabbed him, and a hole was made with one stab. The Medes held out for less than half an hour before they were defeated, but there were too many people behind them, and they squeezed back desperately. Some Arabs behind them didn't understand what happened in front. Seeing that the Medes in front had even thrown away their weapons and looked like they were running for their lives, they were at a loss. Did the front lose? It's just that the speed was too fast. Under the continuous attack of the Medes, the Arabs finally began to flee backwards, and then a chain reaction began. In fact, not only the right wing, but also the left wing of Armenia collapsed quickly. "How is this possible?" Tigrane said with an unbelievable look on his face. "He has more than 300,000 troops. How could the two wings collapse so quickly? The troops behind him haven't arrived yet." Mithridates and Alexander looked at each other in bewilderment. This was too fast. They could already imagine what would happen next. The two wings rolled inward and then formed a siege, or the central army would collapse, and then the whole army would be defeated. Tigranes was not willing to lose so quickly. He roared loudly and ordered the two Armenian armies to go to the rescue. He now understood that those barbarians were good at making a strong show, but if there was a war, they had to rely on the Armenians. Some heralds ran over, but after a long time, they still couldn't see the two Armenian armies. The last herald brought news that the two Armenian armies could not move forward at all, and were finally overwhelmed by the armies of various ethnic groups who were eager to escape. Hearing this, Tigranes felt a sweetness in his throat and a mouthful of old blood spurted out. How could this be? He had an army of 360,000. Defeat. It's a defeat after all. Mithridates sighed and said, seeing this kind of thing many times, he gradually got used to it. Just now I told you to be careful, but there are always people who don't believe me. Alexander couldn't help but sneer. A group of chiefs and kings were so frightened that they didn't care about his ridicule. Mithridates rode away, and Tigranes asked, "What are you doing?" "Running for my life. Do you want to join me?" Mithridates said. Tigranes' mouth twitched. He hesitated for a long time, and finally followed. Seeing Tigranes' royal flag moving backwards, the center army, which had suffered heavy losses, immediately collapsed. The heavy cavalry that was entangled with the cavalry also found an opportunity to leave the battlefield, but it was a pity that they were wearing heavy armor and it was doomed to be impossible for them to escape from the pursuit of the light cavalry. Lucullus led the cavalry to chase them closely, and these heavy cavalry had to stay no matter what, because their threat was too great. Victory! Long live the general! God bless you! Everyone around Levi shouted excitedly. Levi was speechless. No wonder the history books recorded that when Lucullus defeated the Armenian army, only more than 100 people were injured and 5 people died. This was too easy. His own casualties were definitely higher than this. It should be exaggerated in the history books. Western history books love to do this kind of thing, but since he won, he could not give the enemy a chance to regroup. He must take the opportunity to cause the greatest damage to the enemy, so he ordered the army to pursue day and night, and stopped after 3 days of pursuit. During this period, countless enemies were killed and countless gains were made. In Rome, a grand banquet was being held at Cerebio's home. Another group of Livy's retainers were elected as quaestors, tribunes of the people and magistrates, and the elders of Livy's line held a corresponding celebration banquet for them. "I didn't expect you to become a tribune of the people, but it's a pity that you are still behind me," Aeneas said proudly. Sinas looked at him angrily and said, "Don't be so proud. I will become the Grand Justice sooner or later. The tribune of the people is the limit of your life. Become the Grand Justice? Don't dream." "I heard that you were driven back because you displeased the master of the family," Aeneas said. "No, I came back because I was valued by the master of the family. Otherwise, why would the master let me be the tribune of the people?" Sinas would never admit that he would not lose the battle. "Stop pretending here," Aeneas said disdainfully. "Although this news has not been confirmed, it is unknown from which channel it came out. It seems to be related to a beautiful female slave Sarah." The two kept bickering, but Sinas hated Spartacus even more. It was all because of this damn guy. He swore that he would make this guy die in great pain. At this time, a centurion Fengchenpupu walked in. "Hey, Plancus, why are you back?" Sinas said. Plancus was a centurion of Livy's personal guard, and they knew each other. Great victory. General Livy defeated 360,000 enemy troops under the Armenian royal city, and also captured the royal city. Nearly 100,000 enemies were killed and more than 100,000 prisoners were taken. The Armenian queen and several princes and princesses were captured. The centurion said excitedly. Hearing this, the banquet immediately became quiet. "This is simply incredible," Cicero said with a look of shock. But soon there was a burst of cheers, and Livy's victory made them feel extremely proud. "What a pity, if I could have followed him at the beginning," Cerebio sighed and said. "It's good to stay in Rome, but you can't get honor. If he can participate in a few major battles as a deputy general, he can also boast to his descendants and leave a considerable legacy for them." The next day, this matter spread throughout Rome at a whirlwind speed. Plancus reported to the Senate, and the Roman daily which had received the news in advance spread the news throughout Rome. "Shocking! Since the expedition to Pontus, Livius has defeated more than 130 legions of enemies. Together with the enemies he defeated in the civil war in Africa, he has defeated more than 160 legions of enemies, surpassing Sulla, Marius and Scipio Africanus, becoming the first person in Roman history. The true god of war in Rome is born." Livius proposed to the Senate to make Pontus, Armenia, Mesopotamia, Syria and other provinces. The Senate is likely to agree to this proposal. After seeing these news, the whole Roman people were stunned. What? Livius defeated more than 160 legions of enemies, became the first person in Roman history. This is simply incredible. Chapter 278 Diplomatic Mission. Everyone was talking about it. They had never thought that Levi would achieve such a great result at such a young age. But soon Rome fell into a carnival. Who cares? It was a victory anyway. Let's celebrate first. Crassus was a little restless. How could this be possible? As one of the three giants of Rome, Levi's achievements were so dazzling. Although Pompey was not as good as Levi, he was more or less famous. In addition to being rich and powerful, there were few Romans who really admired him. More people despised him, or even hated him. He must achieve great success. Crassus finally made up his mind. In Longcheng school, Sarah was handing bread to the students one by one. Since being brought back by Amelia, Amelia suspected that she had an unspeakable relationship with Levi, so she sent her to Longcheng school and didn't want to see her at all. "Thank you, Aunt Sarah," a little boy about 10 years old said. "So good," Sarah said with a smile. It was actually quite good to be with these children. There was no intrigue. Unfortunately, she couldn't go out to see Spartacus, because she was just a slave. She couldn't even leave Dragon City. "The principal is really amazing. I didn't expect that he could defeat 160 legions of enemies," a child who was queuing said. "Yes, when I grow up, I will also charge and fight for the master of the family. I want to be a great general." "Me too." After hearing what everyone said, Sarah was confused and asked a student in the queue, "What happened?" "The principal defeated the enemy's 360,000 troops in Armenia and killed nearly 100,000 people," the student said excitedly. "Really?" Sarah was surprised. Unexpectedly, Levi became more and more powerful, and her beautiful eyes showed a hint of sadness. Recently, she has been thinking hard about how to meet Spartacus. As she got more and more news, a plan was gradually perfected by her. After leaving school, she went to the gate of the inner city, hoping to meet Amelia. But it was not easy to meet the mistress of Dragon City, because she couldn't even enter the inner city. So she found an opportunity and stopped Meneniel when she saw her taking people out. After several years, Meneniel became more mature, her figure became fuller, and she had a capable and elegant demeanor. Looking at Sarah who was blocking her way, Meneniel frowned slightly, and her tone was a little impolite. "What do you want?" She had no good feelings for this beautiful woman, not to mention that her master didn't like this woman either. "I heard that the lady has been troubled by not being able to get pregnant. We Thracians have a way to make her pregnant," Sarah said. Hearing this, Menenius' face changed. Not being able to get pregnant has always been Amelia's concern. She even went to Galatia to find Levi regardless of her face. As Amelia's personal slave, she knew this best. "What method?" "I used to be a priest of our tribe. I can pray to our gods and ask for a medicine for her," Sarah said. "I will convey your words to the master, but whether to adopt it depends on the mistress's opinion," Menenius said. "Thank you," Sarah said with a smile. She felt that this would be successful in 9 out of 10 cases. Menenius snorted and left. After defeating Tigranes' army, Levi sent troops to capture cities and plunder land in Armenia. With sufficient troops, he was not in the predicament of Lucullus in history. With the power of a great victory, various cities were broken one after another. But what made Levi depressed was that neither Tigranes nor Mithridates were caught. Today, Levi suddenly received a message that Parthia sent an envoy, hoping to mediate the dispute between him and Pontus and Armenia. Levi sneered, not knowing whether Parthia would intervene in the war between Rome and Armenia as in history. At this time, Lysis suddenly brought a message. "Report to the general. We have received a message that Tigranes is hiding in the city of Nisibis, and his brother Gors is the governor there." Lysis said, "That's great. Immediately dispatch 6 legions and all the Thracians and Galatians to surround the city of Nisibis." Levi said excitedly. This time he must personally capture Tigranes and end the Armenian war. "By the way, let the Parthian delegation come to Nisibis to see me," Levi said with a sly smile. "If Tigranes can be captured before they arrive, he will see how they will mediate." With Levi's order, a large number of cavalry quickly rushed to the city of Nisibis and surrounded it. 6 legions of Roman soldiers and a large number of allied wing troops arrived later. They did not attack the city immediately, but built a large number of earth walls to completely surround the city of Nisibis so that no one inside could escape. Realizing this, the people inside felt waves of despair. In the governor's mansion, Tigranes was drunk and uttered unknown mumblings. Gors looked at Tigranes with a complicated expression. Tigranes used to be so ambitious and arrogant. with 4 kings as guards. He was famous, but now he seemed like a poor guy who had lost everything. "Brother, cheer up. As long as the Parthian envoys come, maybe Levi will agree to their mediation," Gulas said. "It's useless. Levi has proposed to the Senate to make Armenia province. The Senate has agreed. The road to mediation is blocked," Tigranes said with a big laugh, but he looked like crying. "Then we should try to hold on, for Mesopotamia, that is the 2 river basins, later Iraq. I think Parthia is still willing to send troops to help," Gulas said. The Parthians proposed the conditions for Tigranes to cede Mesopotamia, and Tigranes, who was desperate, had to agree. "Do you think we can hold on until the Parthian army arrives?" "Don't dream. We are finished, completely finished," Tigranes cried and laughed. Now the Roman army is attacking the city day and night. According to this siege force, the city may be breached in a few days. "So what are you going to do?" Gulas asked. Tigranes' eyes showed a trace of determination, but he soon hesitated. Gulas sighed, knowing that Tigranes was probably thinking of trying to survive. "In that case, I think it's better to surrender. Maybe I can save my life this way," Gulas said. Chapter 279, Captured Alive. "What did you say? How can we surrender?" Tigranes said like a cat whose tail was stepped on. Gulas shook his head. He didn't want to die but refused to surrender. He never thought that his elder brother would be such a person. He used to admire him, so he left here, completely ignoring the screams of Tigranes behind him. At this time, outside the city, prisoners were carrying sacks full of soil and throwing them under the city. Since the price of slaves here was too low and they couldn't be sold at all, Levi simply transferred them here to attack the city. Arrows rained down from the city wall, and javelins were thrown from time to time, but the prisoners had to do dangerous work under the threat of the swords of the Roman soldiers. One by one, the prisoners fell down, but more prisoners rushed up. Levi captured more than 100,000 prisoners in one battle. This is too much cannon fodder. Just one day later, a slope with a width of 200 meters leading directly to the city wall appeared in front of everyone. The soldiers on the top of the city looked ashen. "It's over. It's completely over." At this time, Levi mobilized his soldiers for the final time. "Comrades, do you see that city? This is probably our last important battle. The great King of Kings is hiding there. Do you want to capture him alive?" Levi said loudly. "Yes, yes, yes." Almost all the soldiers shouted excitedly. It would be exciting to think about catching the King of Kings alive. "Now I declare that whoever can capture the King of Kings alive, I will make him a gold medal to commend his achievements. At the same time, I will reward him with 100,000 dinars. Remember, only the living King of Kings will be given money and medals, and the dead one is worthless. Now take action. Money and honor are waiting for you. Everything in Nisibis is yours." Levi said loudly, "Long live Levi, long live Rome, long live Levi, long live Rome." All the soldiers roared, and the passionate trumpets sounded, and those soldiers rushed into the city like a tide. Faced with the high-spirited Roman soldiers and the Thracians and Galatians, the defenders' will to resist was very weak and they surrendered one after another. The soldiers didn't even look at them and rushed to the governor's palace. If nothing unexpected happened, Tigranes would probably be there. When they rushed there, they found that the door of the palace was wide open, and Goras, dressed in neat military uniforms, led everyone to appear in front of them. "Governor Goras of Nisibis surrenders to you," Goras said lightly, and then threw the dagger in his hand to the ground. Seeing this, everyone was dissatisfied. "If you surrender voluntarily, you can't be considered a prisoner. Even if you can't capture the King of Kings alive, it's not bad to capture a governor alive as a prisoner." "Where's Tigranes?" a centurion said. Everyone looked at a man hiding behind Goras. His eyes were red, he was tall, and there was a trace of fear and shame on his face. "Are you the King of Kings?" the centurion said. Tigranes nodded. Seeing this, everyone rushed forward. No matter what, they had to catch him first. "I caught the King of Kings. I caught him. Get out of my way. It's obviously me who caught him." Seeing so many soldiers fighting for their right to be his, Tigranes was almost ashamed and angry. Gulas and others silently made way and kept a distance from Tigranes to avoid being injured by mistake. "What did you say?" Tigranes was caught. In the camp outside the city, Levi was still very happy after hearing the news. "Yes, Gulas and Tigranes surrendered to us at the governor's palace," Lysis said. "What's the point of voluntarily surrendering? It's just that they saw that they had nowhere else to go." Levi looked contemptuous, but this did not hinder his excitement. In addition, more than a dozen soldiers said that they caught Tigranes, and they almost fought for this. Lysis continued. Levi shook his head. "Forget it." He was in a good mood today and didn't bother with them. "Give them 100,000 dinars equally, and give each of them a small gold medal," Levi said. "As you command, General," Lysis said. Not long after, Tigranes, who was tied up, was brought to Levi. Tigranes lowered his head, his face flushed, and it was obvious that he couldn't stand this treatment. "What are you doing?" "Tigranes is my friend. How can you treat him like this? Why don't you untie him quickly?" "Forget it. I'll do it myself." Levi pretended to be angry. He could still take him to the triumphal ceremony. Letting the King of Kings participate in his own triumphal ceremony as a captive, just thinking about it made him feel very excited. What if Tigranes was so depressed that he committed suicide? Therefore, he must be treated as a VIP during this period. It would be even better if someone could do some psychological work on him. After saying this, he personally stepped forward to untie him and comforted him with kind words. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help but roll their eyes. Just now, they shouted to capture the King of Kings alive, but now they said he was your friend, which was really hypocritical. "I am very sorry for what happened before," Tigranes said very sincerely. If he could do it again, he would definitely tie up Mithridates and send him to Livy, so that Livy would have no excuse to attack Armenia. As a result, Mithridates is now nowhere to be found, and he has become the king of a fallen country. "It doesn't matter. We didn't know each other until we fought." Livy patted his shoulder affectionately. Tigranes cursed inwardly. He even lost his country after this fight. "You live here well. If anyone dares to bully me, tell me. Whenever you encounter difficulties, you can come to me," Livy said. Tigranes nodded. He was very clear about how the Romans dealt with the kings of fallen countries. It's just a triumphal procession, and then Rome will arrange a place for him to live. In any case, his life is saved. The destruction of Pontus and Armenia made Livy truly famous. These two countries were truly powerful countries at the time. They destroyed many countries and greatly expanded their own territories. While suppressing rebellions in various places and hunting down Mithridates, Livy was busy dividing the provinces. Antiochus and others also returned to their own countries. They used their original foundations to drive out the Armenian forces after Armenia was eliminated. Of course, if he dared to resist Rome, Livy would not mind destroying them. At the same time, enough state-owned land was left for Rome, which would be rented to those foreigners, and then pay taxes to Rome in the form of rent. In addition, Livy allocated a large amount of land and real estate to the Holy Church, even if the Senate investigated. Chapter 280 Protector. What is the most important thing in missionary work? One word: money. Why did the Holy Church develop so rapidly? It was because Levi kept investing a lot of money. If there were these lands and properties, the Holy Church would have the possibility of entering an internal cycle. Even without Levi's blood transfusion, it would be able to maintain its own operation, and even enter a track of faster development. At present, our plan is to establish the provinces of Bithynia, Syria, Mesopotamia, Pontus, Armenia, Cilicia, and Cappadocia. After merging several small countries, we will form the province of Pamphylia, Levi said excitedly. In this way, there will be 8 provinces. Of course, Bithynia is not counted. That is what the king originally intended to give to Rome. He expanded so many provinces at once, and his achievements are simply the first in Rome. You know, Rome now has only 10 provinces. Ahem. Is this too much? Maybe we can regard the friendly forces in some of these regions as friends of us Romans, Lucullus said. He admitted that he was jealous. Rome had never expanded such a vast territory at once. Would this cause great chaos to Rome? Not much. Not much at all. If possible, I don't mind 1 or 2 more, Livius said. He looked at Palestine on the map. Palestine was now ruled by the Jewish Maccabee family. How could he take Palestine legitimately? At this time, Lysis came in. Report to the general. The Parthian envoys are here, let them in. By the way, call Tigranes as well. Livius said. Soon, several Parthians in robes came in. They had long beards and looked tired. One of the middle-aged men in his 40s had anger in his eyes when he saw Livius, because Livius' guide took them around a lot of detours. They only got here after Tigranes was captured. This despicable guy. At this time, he found Tigranes in the crowd, which made him feel a surge in his heart. Tigranes was captured, and his hope of completing his mission was almost zero. Hello, respected General Levi. I am Vargesus, the head of the Parthian envoys. May the great god Ahura Mazda bless you, the middle-aged man said. Hello, Vargesus. I am Lucius Posius Levi Armenianus Pontonus. May the true god bless you, Levi said. Vargesus's mouth twitched slightly. Levi actually added the title of Conqueror of Armenia and Conqueror of Pontus after his name. This is really too enviable and jealous. Tigranes' face also darkened. He used his best efforts to calm his excitement. After the two sides exchanged greetings for a while, Vargesus got to the point. General Levi, Arthasis is full of goodwill towards Rome, but your behavior makes him very uneasy. Pontus and Armenia are our allies. Now you have defeated them and annexed them, which makes Arthasis very embarrassed. Vargesus said. Every king of Parthia was called Arsaces, just like the pharaohs of Egypt. This Arsaces was named Herod. Is it because we have affected your plan to annex Mesopotamia? Levi sneered. He did not have much good feelings for these guys who mediated on the surface but took sides in the back. This is absolutely not the case. Vargesus said quickly. My friend Tigranes has told me about your deal, and I am deeply shocked by it. But the Romans are tolerant. As long as you give up those unrealistic ideas, Rome is willing to treat you as friends. Levi glanced at Tigranes and said, well, I will convey your thoughts to Arsaces, but can you really not withdraw from Armenia? Vargesus said, I voluntarily offer Armenia to the great Rome, and you don't have to interfere in this matter. Tigranes said at this time. Seeing that Tigranes said so, what else could Vargesus say? Well, I understand. I will go back and report to Arsaces tomorrow, Vargesus said. In fact, after knowing that Tigranes was captured, he knew that his mission would definitely fail. Okay then, Levi said with a smile, and he didn't even bother to keep him. The following days were unusually peaceful. After sending off the Parthian envoys, Levi still sent troops to hunt down Mithridates. This old guy is too good at making trouble. He is so old and still thinking about invading Rome all day long. Levi can't rest easy if he doesn't catch him. Parthia finally sent someone to express its friendship, but just rejected the request for an alliance. Because friends of the Romans are forbidden to form an alliance with others, they can only form an alliance with Rome, which is unacceptable to Parthia. This also made Levi feel relieved. He didn't have to worry about Parthia next. As long as he could capture Mithridates. In the palace of Tigranes, a bearded Armenian knelt on the ground respectfully and spoke words of praise to Levi. Great Levi, you are as great as the god of war Mars. Our tribe is willing to submit to you and hope that you can become the protector of our tribe. After saying that, he kissed Levi's toe. The war in Armenia has subsided during this period, and Levi began the restoration work in Armenia. In addition, he also became the protector of a large number of Armenian tribes. The Armenian cavalry is not the best in the world, but it is absolutely first class in frontal charge and horse archery. They are natural cavalrymen, and neither the Numidian cavalry nor the Galatian cavalry is their opponent, so he attaches great importance to this work. That's great. I am willing to be the protector of your tribe. If you encounter any difficulties, you can come to me, and I will help you solve all problems, Levi said with a smile. The bearded man was also very happy. It was actually a good thing for them that Levi became the protector of their tribe. At least they don't have to worry about their own safety, and even ordinary Romans dare not do anything to them. After the bearded man left, Levi came outside the palace. It was winter, and the Roman army began to camp for the winter. They finally had a chance to rest. In order to capture Mithridates, Levi ordered the army to march north. It was said that he was hiding among the Scythians there. He fought countless battles with the Scythians, conquered countless tribes and kings of small countries, and even reached the Caucasus Mountains. Chapter 281 Defamation. But the arrival of winter put an end to all this. Levi knew how cold the winter in the Caucasus was. Even in later generations, there were still a lot of people freezing to death, let alone now. Levi was thinking about what to do next year. He only had 1.5 years of command. How should he make good use of this year and a half? Parthia was so honest that he was embarrassed to invade directly. Levi finally set his sights on Palestine. During this period, the Arabs near Syria were attacking Syria. For this reason, Antiochus reported the situation there to him, hoping that he could send troops to suppress the Arabs there. Next year, he would use this excuse to go to Syria, and maybe he could find an excuse to intervene in Palestine. But the capture of Mithridates could only come to an end temporarily. Thinking of this, he felt a pity. At this time, Lucullus walked in. His face was a little uneasy, which made Levi very strange. "What's the matter?" Levi asked. "I have something to ask. Will our war end next year?" Lucullus said. "Yes, about the same." Levi thought for a while and said, "Even if it takes less than a year to conquer Palestine and the Arabs, he will most likely return to Rome next year." More than a year has passed, and no one knows what has become of Rome. "I want to be able to serve as consul after I go back next year. I wonder if you can support me," Lucullus said hesitantly. Levi's support is crucial to him, not only because he has a large number of retainers and tenants under him, but also because once Levi returns, his reputation in Rome will be unmatched. At that time, as long as he speaks in support, coupled with his own experience in the war, he will most likely be a consul. Levi was startled. He didn't expect Lucullus to mention this. He didn't agree immediately, but thought about it, because he didn't know when Spartacus would revolt. History had been changed by him. What if Spartacus revolted when Lucullus was consul? Although Spartacus defeated the consul in history, it was not then Levi underestimated Spartacus. If it was Lucullus, he would never be Lucullus's opponent. Lucullus led 3 Roman legions to defeat the fierce men who defeated the nearly 600,000 troops of Pontus and Armenia, and defeated the coalition of Pontus, Armenia and Parthia in the Armenian royal city. Spartacus was not even a match for Crassus, let alone Lucullus. Livius had always planned to use Spartacus to become consul, and he couldn't let him ruin it. "Don't you want to?" Lucullus said bitterly. Without Livius' support, although he had the hope of becoming consul, the possibility of failure was also very high. "Of course I am willing, but I have 2 conditions." Livius said. "What conditions? Please tell me," Lucullus said with a refreshed spirit. "First, I hope you can convert to the Holy Church." Livius said. Hearing this, Lucullus hesitated for a while. He believed in Jupiter and Mars since he was a child, and he was still reluctant to believe in the true God. He had a certain understanding of the doctrines of the Holy Church, and knew that if he really converted to the Holy Church, he would deny Jupiter and Mars. "Why, you don't want to?" Levi said with a half-smile. "I remember that when you supported the Cotta brothers, you didn't seem to make such a request," Lucullus said resentfully. "Now the situation has changed, and they are them, and you are you," Levi said. Lucullus was silent for a while, and finally made up his mind. "Okay, I promise you." The desire for the consul in his heart finally defeated the piety of the gods, but he made up his mind in his heart that he still believed in Jupiter. If he didn't say it, who would know? "That's great, congratulations on finding the only truth in the world," Levi said with a big laugh, and patted his shoulder affectionately. He also guessed his thoughts. But what does it matter? How ignorant the world is. Really think that their holy religion is just for fun. You are a shallow believer, but your descendants may not be, and then generations will truly convert to the holy religion. When doing religion, you must have a long-term vision, and you must not only look at the gains and losses in front of you. "How about I baptize you myself tomorrow?" Livius said. "It's better to get this done while the iron is hot." "Well then," Lucullus said, "I haven't thought about the second thing yet. It will probably be after you are elected consul, but don't worry, I won't let you do anything that goes against your conscience or morality." Livius said, "Then this matter is settled." Lucullus was overjoyed. This matter was actually quite simple. "Of course," Livius said, So the next day Livius personally baptized Lucullus, attracting a large number of people to watch the ceremony. At the same time, the news that he supported Lucullus to be consul also spread, making countless people envious. All the people Livius supported over the years became consuls, and none of them ran away, so everyone congratulated Lucullus, which made Lucullus feel that he had made the right choice. Just when Levi was about to pass this winter uneventfully, Lysis quietly found him. "General, I have something to report to you." In a canteen of the Roman military camp, Publius Percle was talking to several officers. "Do you know how much money we robbed? I tell you, at least 50,000 talents. 1 talent equals 6,000 dinars. The silver and copper coins in Tigranes' treasury were piled up into a mountain, but a lot of this money was secretly embezzled by Livius. We are lucky to get 10,000 talents." "That's unlikely." "Is there so much money?" a centurion exclaimed. "How much is 50,000 talents? This is simply an astronomical figure. How can it be impossible? We have robbed so many countries and cities. It is normal to have such a little money." "This is what my brother-in-law Lucullus told me. He is a deputy general and knows a lot of inside information," Publius said. In addition, many properties and real estates have been transferred to his own name. The value of these properties and real estates is at least 30,000 talents. The officers looked different. Some believed it, while others did not. In any case, Levi's glorious image in their minds dimmed a lot. Publius was very proud. "You cut off our financial resources. You will suffer this time." Not far from him, several officers were listening to them with their heads down. If Publius looked carefully, he would find that one of them was Levi. Chapter 282 Rumors. But he didn't wear the big red cape of a commander, but was just dressed as an ordinary officer. At this time, Levi was furious. This damn Publius dared to say bad things about him in front of so many officers. He deserved to die. "How long has he been doing this?" Levi asked with a sullen face. "I didn't know at first, but later I asked around and it's been at least a year," Lysis whispered. Bang! Levi was so angry that he slammed the table in front of him. If nothing unexpected happened, it started from the day when usury was restricted. He remembered that he had warned them and let them go for Claudia's sake. He didn't expect that they would not repent at all. The sound he made attracted the attention of many people, including Publius and several officers next to him. Publius looked at Lysis with some surprise. This person looked so familiar. No, he was Lysis, Levi's adjutant. Publius's face changed drastically. Then who was sitting next to him? The back figure looked more and more familiar. At this time, Levi turned around with a cold face. It was indeed him. "General," a centurion said with fear. He never thought that Levi would appear here, and they were just arranging him. The other officers also stood up and looked at Levi anxiously. Levi stared at Publius, and then asked loudly, "Tell me, did Lucullus really say that we robbed 50,000 talents?" Publius' face turned red and white, and finally he said in his heart, "Yes, he did say so." "Do you want me to call him over for a confrontation?" Levi said angrily. "Who does this guy think he is? He dared to lie to his face. No wonder he brought disaster to the Percle family and seduced Caesar's wife, and even he wanted to kill him. Even if he comes, he dare not tell the truth." "You are a general. How dare he offend you?" Publius said. At this time, more and more soldiers gathered. When they saw Levi and Publius clashing, they all kept silent. After Publius's constant brainwashing over the past year, many of them thought that Livius had swallowed up a lot of money. If it weren't for the victory that covered up all the contradictions, they would have publicly expressed their dissatisfaction with Livius. All the spoils of war are counted by 2 quaestors, who are appointed by the Senate. If you don't trust the general, you have to trust the 2 quaestors. Lysis said at this time, when the Roman army went out, the Senate would appoint a quaestor to help the general deal with various financial and logistical issues, and at the same time have supervisory responsibilities. For example, Lucullus was Sulla's quaestor, and when Marius fought against Jugurtha, the king of Numidia, Sulla was Marius' quaestor. However, because Livius's army was too large, the Senate appointed 2 quaestors. "They have been bribed by you a long time ago," Publius said. Hearing this, Livius really wanted to kill him. He decided to kill Publius this time, even if he was Claudia's brother. Now that he had made up his mind, his face calmed down instead. Publius' heart jumped. He knew that he had offended Levi so much this time, maybe he would kill him. Looking at the soldiers gathering around him, Levi said loudly, "Dear Roman soldiers, I never knew that when the Roman army achieved such a great victory, there were still people slandering me behind my back. We did get a lot of wealth, and a lot of valuable items are being converted into cash. A lot of this wealth will be handed over to the country." The soldiers listened to Levi's words silently. They understood this truth, but they were more concerned about how much money they could get, which was the biggest purpose of joining the army. "But I promise you that each of you can get at least 2,000 dinars of wealth," Levi said loudly. Hearing this, the soldiers were extremely shocked. 2,000 dinars? There are so many. You know, the annual salary of Roman soldiers is only 112 dinars, and they have to prepare their own food. They can't save money every year, and they may even have to pay for it. These 2,000 dinars are almost the greatest wealth they can get in their lifetime. Many Roman soldiers were talking excitedly, and their dissatisfaction with Levi was swept away. The lovely dinar was enough to defeat any rumors, so everyone doesn't need to worry. Everyone just needs to fight with peace of mind. We can go home next year, and then the money we get will be more than 2,000 dinars, Levi said. "Long live the general!" I don't know who shouted loudly, "Long live Levi! Long live the general!" Those soldiers shouted excitedly. They volunteered to serve beyond their term. Isn't it just for money to fight abroad? Levi can bring them a huge amount of money, which is enough. Before leaving, Levi stared at Publius coldly. He was already thinking about changing his position and arranging a mission for him to die. As the commander of an army, there are too many ways to make a subordinate die. Publius's face turned cold. He saw the deep malice in Levi's eyes, which made him feel extremely uneasy. Maybe it's time to discuss countermeasures with his elder brother. "Can you come in for a moment, General?" Lucullus's voice came from outside Levi's office door. 2 days had passed since the incident. Levi sent Lysis to deliver his transfer order, but he received the news that Publius had disappeared. Levi immediately signed the order to arrest Publius. "If you dare to be a deserter, don't blame me for torturing you to death." "Come in," Levi said lightly. Soon Lucullus and Appius Perkel walked in together. After seeing Appius, Levi's face immediately turned cold. Publius had spread rumors about him for a year, and he didn't believe that Appius didn't know. This was also not a good person. "Are you here to lobby for him?" Levi asked. "Yes, it's just a misunderstanding. I sent him out on business at the time, and my subordinates didn't know about it." "He is definitely not a deserter," Lucullus said with a wry smile. "Since he is not a deserter, I can cancel the wanted order for him. I order him and Appius to be transferred to the 3rd Battalion in Thrace. I received news that Mithridates is hiding in a Scythian tribe in the deep mountains of the Caucasus. I order you to lead a squadron in Thrace to encircle and suppress this Scythian tribe immediately." Levi acted like a matter of business. However, he did not hide his malice. The Caucasus in this era was colder than in later times, often with temperatures of more than 20 degrees below zero and heavy snow covering the mountains. At this time, sending them deep into the Caucasus was no different from sending them to their deaths. Chapter 283 Traces. Appius's face changed drastically. He didn't expect that Levi would even kill him. "General, what happened that day was all a misunderstanding. I didn't know he was doing that kind of thing. If I knew, I would definitely stop him. Here, I express my deep apologies to you on his behalf. I am willing to make any compensation," Appius said hurriedly. "Okay, I accept your apology. Now go and execute the order. Don't let Mithridates run away," Levi said lightly. Appius looked helpless. "Are you trying to scare us?" In the end, he could only say, "I hope you will let him go once for the sake of Claudia and my father." Cough. Cough. Levi couldn't help coughing twice. "This is really, I didn't expect them to know. There is really no impenetrable wall in this world." "So did the Metellus family know?" Levi suddenly felt guilty, but soon he became angry and said, "I saved your lives when Sulla declared you as the public enemy of Rome. Even if your father is still alive, Publius will still make you the public enemy of Rome. I know the relationship between you and your sister, so I hope you can let him go again." Appius said, "When you asked Lamia to accuse me in the Senate, I let you go once for her sake. I warned you afterwards, but it is obvious that you did not take my warning seriously at all." Livius said, "We are willing to pay any price." Appius said, "Any price?" Hearing this, Livius sneered. "There is nothing that politicians cannot trade. As long as there are enough benefits, today's enemies may become the closest friends tomorrow." But Livius did not want to forgive Publius so much. What he did was really too much. "I know someone is secretly organizing an alliance against you. I can tell you all their news." Appius said, "Who is it?" Livius asked. "The Metellus family, the Dumius family, and several other old nobles have been collecting the mistakes you made, preparing to find an opportunity to defeat you in one fell swoop." Appius said. Levi's eyes narrowed slightly. They were all his old rivals. "Do they know about my relationship with Claudia?" Levi asked. "They should have heard a little bit of the wind." Appius said. Levi was embarrassed now. "Sure enough, cheating will not end well. In fact, as long as you are willing to divorce Aemilia, we can marry Claudia to you at any time." Appius said. Compared with the Metellus family, Levi is much stronger in both power and potential. Huge wealth, great achievements, and the founder of the Holy Church are all incomparable to the Metellus family. If you can marry Levi, it will be much stronger than the Metellus family. "This is impossible," Levi said. After Aemilia said that she was willing to go forward and retreat with him, he vowed not to let her down. As for the relationship between Monim and others, cough, 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 this cannot be considered as a betrayal of her. According to the regulations of the Holy Church, everyone can marry 8 wives. If you make a donation to the Holy Church, you can marry more wives. As the founder of the Holy Church, Livius must lead by example. Moreover, Livius decided to amend Roman law at an appropriate time and thoroughly make this religious law the law of the entire Rome. Although Rome's military strength is strong, it has always been short of people, and even the nobles are no exception. A lot of territories have been conquered, but there is a lack of population to occupy these areas, which is inseparable from monogamy. On the contrary, whether it is China, where one wife and multiple concubines are allowed, or a certain country that can marry 4 wives, their fertility is off the charts, far behind Rome. The deepest secret was revealed in front of him, which made it difficult for Livius to treat Appius toughly. Lucullus looked weird, but this kind of thing was really common in Rome. Just like Caesar was famous for having many lovers, as long as you let Publius go, our Perker family is willing to support you, and the Claudius clan, which is friendly with us, is also willing to support you. Appius continued. Levi hesitated. Whether in the Roman Republic or the Roman Empire, the Claudius clan was an extremely powerful clan. In the late years of the Republic, in addition to the Perker family, the most powerful Claudius clan was the Marcellus clan, and they all played a very important role. In addition, the Nero clan was also quite powerful, and their descendants even produced a very famous Roman emperor. "Do you want to be a shameless politician? You must help me conceal my relationship with Claudia," Levi finally said. "No problem. Swear on the honor of the family. Unless you admit it yourself, we will never admit your relationship with Claudia," Appius said happily. Swearing on the honor of the family is a very serious oath. Every noble attaches great importance to the honor of the family. This is the difference between them and the common people, and it is also the basis for them to show their talents in the political arena. Donate 6 million dinars to the Holy Church, and the matter will be over, Levi said. It was impossible to make him forgive them with just a few words. He must bleed them hard and let them remember this lesson. Is it too much? Can it be less? How about 3 million dinars? Appius's face changed. 6 million dinars is a huge sum of money for any family, even Levi is no exception. If they take out so much money, their Perkel family will definitely be seriously injured. This is not negotiable, Levi said. 4 million dinars, Appius begged. Levi stared at him coldly and said nothing. Appius's face was bitter. He knew that if he said anything more, Levi would turn against him. "Okay, I agree." "Well, then you don't have to go to the 3rd Thracian Battalion. I have something to do. You go back first." Levi issued an expulsion order without any hesitation, and Lucullus and Appius had to leave here in disgrace. Time flies. The cold winter finally passed, and early spring arrived. Livius' army was busy, preparing to go to Syria and launch an expedition against the Arabs on the east bank of the Jordan River. At this time, Lysias brought him a message. A Scythian said he knew where Mithridates was, but he wanted us to honor our reward and let go of the captured people from his tribe. When Livius heard the news, he was ecstatic. "Tell him there is no problem. Bring him to see me quickly." Not long after, a Scythian wearing a fur coat was brought here. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 284 Raid. He was very young, looking only in his 20s, with a hint of anger in his eyes. "Young man, tell me where Mithridates is. As long as you catch him, all your requests can be met." Levi said with a smile. "No problem. But you must release the people of our tribe." The young man said. "What's going on?" Levi asked. "Last year, our army encountered obstruction from their tribe while searching for Mithridates, so the two sides had a conflict and many people from their tribe were captured." Lysias said briefly. "Why do you search our tribe?" "Of course we can't agree," the young man said angrily. Levi looked disdainful. The wailing of the weak was meaningless, but he needed his cooperation. "Young man, some things have happened, so they are irreversible. What we do now is to remedy it. Tell me where Mithridates is, and I will release the people of your tribe after I catch him." Levi said. "Those who were sold as slaves must also be redeemed by you?" The young man said angrily. "Yes, provided that Mithridates can be captured," said Levi. "Okay, I'll tell you right now," said the young man. In a Scythian tribe between the mountains, Mithridates hid in a dark wooden house, sitting at a table in a somewhat decadent manner, drinking a bottle of whiskey from Rome. This kind of wine has been very popular in the Caucasus since its launch. Drinking a sip of whiskey in winter and experiencing the feeling of the hotness flowing from the throat to the stomach is like being a living god. Unfortunately, the price of whiskey is too expensive, and ordinary people can't afford it. Even if the country was destroyed, Mithridates still had a lot of money, and it was easy for him to drink some whiskey. Moreover, Mithridates liked the feeling of being drunk very much, which could make him forget many troubles. At this time, Alexander pushed the door and walked in. The sudden cold wind made Mithridates sober up, which made him very angry. "Close the door," Mithridates said angrily. Alexander closed the door silently. At this time, Mithridates' face was full of wrinkles, his hair was scattered on his shoulders, and his stubble looked like he hadn't taken care of it for more than 10 days. He was no longer as ambitious as before, but Mithridates promoted him from an ordinary soldier to a nobleman, and he was very kind to him. He was a very sentimental person. Even if Mithridates was in a bad state, he didn't intend to abandon him. "Your Majesty, you can't do this anymore. Take care of yourself," Alexander said. "Go away, don't bother me if you have nothing to do." Mithridates said, "I received some news that Livius has decided to lead the army to Syria. As long as he leaves, we can raise a group of people with the support of Parthia, and there may be hope of restoring the country." Alexander said, "Really? How many troops did he leave behind?" Mithridates immediately became energetic, with a gleam of light in his eyes, and he didn't look decadent at all. 1 Roman legion and 1 Galatian legion in Pontus, 2 Roman legions in Armenia, and he appointed Olabula as the governor of the 2 provinces to lead these 4 legions. Alexander said, 4 legions? Mithridates could not help but frown. Olabula had a lot of combat experience, and it was not easy to defeat these 4 legions. Thinking of this, he took a big gulp of wine. The Parthians said that as long as we are willing to cede the Bosporus to them, they are willing to fund us 3 million drachmas to build an army. Alexander said, "What a greedy group of people." Mithridates cursed viciously. He knew the Parthians' thoughts very well. They wanted to cause trouble for the Romans but did not want to do it themselves, and they also wanted to get benefits. "Promise them, since my dear son betrayed me, don't blame me for being rude." Mithridates sneered. Until now, he could not forgive the governor of Bosporus for surrendering to Livy. "When we start the rebellion, we will tell the Romans about this and try to drag the Parthians into the water. Mithridates showed a fox-like smile on his face. "Your Majesty, you are wise," Alexander said with admiration. Even though he was over 60 years old, Mithridates was still full of fighting spirit. He was a true man who never lost his heart and kept making trouble for the Romans. "Ha ha ha, to celebrate our victory, you have a few drinks with me," Mithridates said with a big laugh. Alexander didn't want to spoil his fun, so he drank with him. Maybe Mithridates had drunk too much, and soon, Mithridates was completely drunk. At this time, braving the biting cold wind, a Roman army had arrived at the small village. This was a team of 3,000 infantry and 300 cavalry, and Caesar was the commander of this army. "Is this the place?" Caesar said to the Scythian. "Yes, I heard from a friend a few days ago. He said that Mithridates was in their tribe and gave him a lot of money to buy wine," the young man said. Caesar nodded, and then commanded the soldiers to surround the village. Because the winter snow had not completely melted, many Scythians hid in their houses, and the whole village was very quiet. Only a few of Alexander's confidants were exceptions. Because of the Romans' pursuit, they did not give up their vigilance even now. At this time, they found the Roman army approaching quietly, which surprised them, so they hurriedly ran into the village. While running, they shouted loudly, "Oh no! The Romans are coming! The Romans are coming!" Hearing this, Caesar cursed secretly and asked the soldiers to speed up. The cavalry immediately accelerated and rushed into the village. The heavy sound of horse hooves woke everyone up. Some Scythians picked up their weapons and rushed out of the house, and then gathered together. At this time, they found that they were surrounded by the Roman army. "Romans, what are you doing here?" a tall middle-aged man came out and said. After this period of war, they also knew that the Romans were not easy to mess with. Many Scythian villages were broken by the Romans and the whole family was sold as slaves. So they said patiently, "I have received news that Mithridates is hiding in your village. I will search your village. If you refuse, you will become our enemy and your entire village will be sold as slaves," Caesar said calmly. Hearing this, the Scythians were in a commotion. They knew that Mithridates was in their village. So how could they let the Romans search? Chapter 285 Arrest. "Dear Romans, we are willing to be friends with you, but you cannot search here. It is an offense to us," the middle-aged man said with a stiff face. Caesar sneered and said, "So you refuse? We can sit down and drink together." "Attack," Caesar said with disdain. A group of barbarians still wanted to play tricks with him, and they didn't even look in the mirror to see who they were. The passionate trumpet sounded, and after receiving the order to attack, all the Roman troops immediately launched the attack. Alexander hid in the house and watched all this in fear. The Romans actually surrounded this place. What should he do? Although the Scythians are strong, they are at an absolute disadvantage in terms of numbers. How can they be the opponent of the Romans? He walked to Mithridates and kept pushing him. "Your Majesty, wake up quickly, the Romans are coming." But no matter how he pushed Mithridates just couldn't wake up. It seems that he drank too much today. Alexander looked at him helplessly, and said to several of his confidants around him, "Help His Majesty up, we are going to break out, let's go by ourselves." A confidant said hesitantly. Mithridates was obviously a burden, and the hope of escaping with him would be greatly reduced. Alexander's eyes flashed coldly. He took out his dagger, and cut the throat of the confidant with one sword, and a lot of blood spurted out. The confidant covered his throat and fell down with an unbelievable look on his face. "Remember, you must never be unfaithful to His Majesty at any time. Don't forget the oath you made," Alexander said. We know. The confidant said with fear. Alexander helped Mithridates up, and then carried him out the door, and several confidants hurried to help. At this time, the fighting outside was in full swing. They came to the place where the horses were stored and found that several Scythians were snatching their horses. It was obvious that they were not the only ones who wanted to break out. "Friend, these are our horses. You can't do this," Alexander said. "You damn bastards, if it weren't for you, our village would not have been attacked by the Romans. You are a bunch of disaster stars. Now I declare that these horses belong to us. Get out of here. Otherwise, I will chop you," a Scythian man said angrily. Alexander's eyes were red. How could Mithridates escape without his horses? It can be said that these were Mithridates' lives. Seeing that those people were about to leave here on their horses, Alexander hurriedly stopped them. "Friend, I only need 2 horses, just 2 horses are enough, and the rest are all yours." "2 horses? Haha, I won't give you any." A Scythian grinned, and then directly slapped his horse and rushed towards Alexander. It was obvious that if he didn't dodge, he would hit him to death. Alexander was in despair. How could this happen? These Scythians were so hateful. Alexander made up his mind, pulled the Scythian down, and stabbed him in the heart with a sword. The Scythian was caught off guard and stabbed. He didn't expect Alexander to dare to kill people in their village. A lot of blood flowed from his chest. You are dead," he pointed at Alexander and said with difficulty, and then fell in a pool of blood. "Don't do it yet," Alexander said to his confidants. But to his disappointment, none of those confidants took action, but looked at him with complicated expressions. What he said just now really broke their hearts. Alexander was going to abandon them. "Haha, you bastard, now you are deserted by everyone, go to hell." Those Scythians dismounted and besieged him. Alexander was desperate. He kept apologizing to those confidants, hoping that they would forgive him, but they were not willing to believe him. The Romans had surrounded the place, and taking Mithridates with them would definitely mean a dead end. One of the confidants even took the opportunity to grab a war horse and rushed out of the village, which caused the Scythians to curse. They assigned one person to look after the war horses, while the others continued to besiege Alexander. Although Alexander was good at martial arts, he was no match for so many people. Soon he was hacked to pieces and fell to the ground unwillingly. Feeling the pain all over his body, Alexander crawled to Mithridates with difficulty, bleeding a lot along the way. He held his hand tightly, and Mithridates was promoted from a humble position. He repaid Mithridates with his life, and he had no regrets in his life. Finally, he closed his eyes. The Scythians rode away on their war horses, cursing. "What should we do?" a confidant said in fear. "I think we should offer him up, so that we may be able to save our lives." Another confidant kicked Mithridates under his feet. The eyes of the others lit up. This was indeed a good idea, so they hurriedly hid Mithridates on their backs. The battle in the village ended soon, and the bodies of the Scythians were everywhere. Some people saw that they were no match, so they put down their weapons and surrendered in time, saving their lives. The Romans began to search from house to house, and not long after, a Roman soldier ran over happily. "Sir, we caught Mithridates, we caught Mithridates." Hearing this, Caesar was overjoyed. "Where is he? Take me to see him." Soon he found Mithridates hidden by those confidants, and he was still sleeping soundly at this time. Seeing this, Caesar breathed a sigh of relief. This was really great. It was a good thing to catch Mithridates, but after Mithridates learned that he had been caught, he kept looking for death, which gave Levi a headache. He had to find all his relatives and friends to persuade him, and he used both coercion and inducement to appease this uncle. Thinking that he had ended the decades-long Mithridatic war with his own hands and captured Mithridates and Tigranes alive, Levi felt very proud. Although he also captured many kings of small countries and tribal chieftains alive, they were nothing compared to these two. Having completely solved the worries of Pontus and Armenia, Levi finally led his army to Syria. Winter passed and spring came. The melodious church bells echoed in Dragon City, and patrols were seen from time to time. Since the last attack, Levi expanded his guard to a legion instead of 10,000 people, and the guard force of Dragon City was greatly strengthened. Chapter 286 Crazy. He planned to leave the remaining quota for the orphans he had raised since childhood. These orphans who were raised with loyalty education since childhood were his true confidants. Sarah walked out of Amelia's palace with a faint smile on her face. Amelia tried her method on other women who could not get pregnant. Although it did not work completely, at least a few of them got pregnant, which made her gain Amelia's trust. Amelia not only changed her to an easy job, but also promised to give her and Spartacus freedom as long as she got pregnant with Levi's child. This made Sarah see a ray of light in the darkness, so that she and Spartacus could return to their hometown. When she walked to the gate of the inner city, her face turned cold, because she found a man she hated so much talking to another person. and at this time they also found Sarah approaching. "Sarah, it seems that you have been doing well recently, even the lady trusts you." SYNOPSIS smiled playfully, with undisguised desire in his eyes. When he thought of Sarah's gentle moans under him, he felt a burst of heat. He had had many women, but he found that he liked Sarah the most. Moreover, after not seeing her for a while, Sarah became more beautiful and charming, mixed with the unique temperament of a priest, and SYNOPSIS felt that he was more obsessed with her. "SYNOPSIS, you'd better not pester me, otherwise I will tell my wife all this." "I think my wife hates men like you the most," Sarah said coldly. SYNOPSIS' face froze. Sarah really hit his weakness, but he quickly said, "How can you say it's pestering? I really like you, and I will go to Rome to take up my post soon, and I will become a senator of the Roman Senate. How about giving up Spartacus and marrying me? I will treat you well." Morris looked at SYNOPSIS with some surprise. Did he really like this slave? It was not a good thing for a senator to marry a slave as his wife. "You'd better give up this idea." "I will not marry a shameless man like you," Sarah said coldly, and was about to leave, but Morris stopped him at this time. "Are you Sarah?" Sarah looked at the man. For some reason, the man made her feel uncomfortable. He looked at him with a cold look, like a poisonous snake in the dark, which might bite someone at any time. "Who are you?" Sarah asked. "Morris," Morris said lightly. Hearing this, Sarah was shocked. Morris is very famous in Dragon City. His intelligence team secretly monitors everything in Dragon City. Maybe the ant who buys vegetables for you is a peripheral member of the intelligence team. He knows almost all the secrets of Dragon City and is a person that every slave is reluctant to talk about. "What's the matter with you?" Sarah calmed down quickly. She didn't do anything wrong and was not afraid of Morris at all. "I know you approached the lady to save Spartacus, but I advise you not to play any tricks or make any evil sacrifices in Dragon City. This is the territory of the true God, and only the true God is allowed to be believed here." Morris said coldly. "I know. If there is nothing else, I can leave," Sarah said with a somewhat ugly face. Morris nodded, and Sarah left here quickly. "You said she wanted to save Spartacus?" asked SYNOPSIS. "That's right. Madam said that as long as she gets pregnant with the master's child, she will give her and Spartacus freedom." "Why are you jealous?" Morris said with a smile. He knew all about the grievances between SYNOPSIS, Spartacus and Sarah, and he knew much more inside information than SYNOPSIS, such as it was not so easy for Spartacus to get freedom, but due to the regulations, he did not mention these. SYNOPSIS' face immediately darkened. How could he let Spartacus, the damn guy, get freedom? The hateful thing is that Spartacus has become Quintus's cash cow now. It is harder than climbing to the sky for him to kill Spartacus. Even if he leaves, he can't let Spartacus have an easy life. Thinking of this, a vicious plan appeared in his mind. "What do you think of me proposing to Madam?" SYNOPSIS said. "Do you really want to marry her?" Morris said in shock. SYNOPSIS nodded. He knew that Levi was very dissatisfied with his rape of Sarah. Even his wife was no exception. This was very detrimental to his career. But if he married Sarah, then things would turn around. This proved that he loved Sarah. If he did something in the name of love, many things could be forgiven, and it could be used to attack Spartacus. As long as he thought of Sarah being with him every day, Spartacus must be extremely painful. SYNOPSIS had an evil smile on his face. "That's right. Do you know what you are doing?" Morris said. "I know people will laugh at me, but didn't the censor Cato the Elder also marry a slave?" SYNOPSIS said. The Cato the Elder he mentioned was the ancestor of Cato the Younger, a very famous person in Roman history. It was his insistence that led to the complete destruction of Carthage by Rome. Moreover, the censor was more noble than the consul in some ways. Its term of office rarely exceeded 1 year. The censor even had the right to check the elders. If he believed that some elders did not meet the requirements of the elders, he could even expel the elders from the Senate. Cato the Elder also served as a consul, but people generally called him Cato the Inspector. SYNOPSIS didn't care about other people's ridicule, as long as he could change the impression in Levi's mind. He thought it was all worth it. As long as Levi supported him, he would definitely become the Chief Justice. Morris looked at him speechlessly. He was really crazy. In front of Quintus Batiatus' villa, Quintus and his wife were waiting for the arrival of a distinguished guest. "I didn't expect SYNOPSIS to bring little Levi to our house. This is really great. If he can come to our house often, then we can establish a good relationship with little Levi, which will be a great help to my career," Quintus said with a smile. "But we can't be careless. SYNOPSIS has always wanted to kill Spartacus. Maybe he has some bad ideas," Lydia said. "You make a lot of sense. Fortunately, he is about to leave Capua. But he is a lucky guy. He became the tribune of the people," Quintus said with envy. "I believe you are no worse than him," Lydia said affectionately while holding his arm. Looking at his loving wife, Quintus felt happy. With such a wife, what else could a husband ask for? The only regret was that they had no children yet. Chapter 287 Meeting. "Excuse me, are you Quintus Basiatus?" At this time, an extremely beautiful woman said. She had a collar around her neck with the 3 letters LPL engraved on it. She looked like a slave, but her temperament was ethereal and noble, and she looked very extraordinary. "I am. Who are you?" Quintus asked. "My name is Sarah, and I am the wife of Spartacus," Sarah said. Hearing this, Quintus and his wife were shocked. Spartacus had been begging them to buy Sarah back, but after knowing that Sarah had become Levi's slave, they knew that this was impossible. But they didn't expect Sarah to appear in front of them. "Really, I didn't expect it. We have been looking for you for a long time. I heard that you became General Levi's slave and we are trying to save you," Quintus said incoherently. "This time I came here to meet Spartacus," Sarah said. "No problem. Spartacus is inside. I think he will be very happy to see you," Quintus said. "How about this? I will take you to see him in person." He thought that it would take some time for little Levi to come, and this time was enough for Sarah and Spartacus to meet. "Thank you very much." Sarah smiled. Quintus winked at Lydia and took her away. "By the way, I have one more thing to tell you. Madame Aemilia may by Spartacus," Sarah said. "What did you say?" Quintus said in shock. "Spartacus is his #1 gladiator, and his strength is getting stronger and stronger. Neither Cruz nor Castos is his opponent. How can he be willing to let Aemilia buy Spartacus? But don't worry, Madame will use the position of Capua elder to exchange Spartacus with you," Sarah said with a smile. "Capua elder? What's going on?" Quintus asked quickly. So Sarah told Quintus what had happened. After listening to it, Quintus was both happy and worried. He was happy that his long-cherished wish could finally be fulfilled, but he was worried that he would lose Spartacus. He didn't know whether it was worth it, and he didn't even know when Spartacus was brought here. "Sarah, how could it be you?" Spartacus said in shock after seeing Sarah. "Spartacus." Sarah looked at Spartacus with tears of joy, and then threw herself into his arms like a swallow. Spartacus hugged her tightly, feeling the fragrance coming from her body, and said excitedly, "Why are you here? I thought I would never see you again." "I became Levi's slave, and he will be rescued from SYNOPSIS, but don't worry, we may be free soon," Sarah said. "Freedom? What's going on?" Spartacus asked hurriedly. So Sarah told the story again. Spartacus didn't expect Sarah to do so much for him, which made him very grateful. "What a beautiful sight. I was almost moved to tears." At this time, a hateful voice came from the side. Spartacus and Sarah looked back and saw that it was indeed the man they hated so much, but next to him stood an innocent and cute little boy. Seeing the little boy, Spartacus and Sarah were both solemn. "Hello, respected little master." "Hello, little Levi." Spartacus and Sarah bowed and said, "Ha, you are finally here. I am very sorry that I did not go to greet Spartacus's wife in person." Quintus said quickly, "It doesn't matter, Spartacus. Is she your wife?" little Levi asked curiously. He had been very familiar with Spartacus during this period. "Yes, her name is Sarah," Spartacus said. "Are you my father's slave?" Little Levi saw the collar on Sarah's neck. "Yes, little master." Sarah bowed and said, "Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you one thing, Sarah. I just proposed to my wife, hoping to marry you, and she has agreed," SYNOPSIS said with a smile, but there was a joke hidden in that smile that only Sarah and Spartacus could understand. Everyone exclaimed, "This is impossible." Sarah was just a slave, but SYNOPSIS was a civilian tribune, a senator of the Roman Senate, and had a noble status. How could he marry a slave? "Are you crazy?" Sarah said in shock. "You bastard. Do you know what you are doing?" I'm going to kill you, Spartacus said angrily, and then rushed directly to Cinna's. Cinna's eyes showed the color of conspiracy. Calm down, Spartacus, he is deliberately provoking you. Sarah hurriedly hugged him and said. At this time, there was a sound of swords being drawn around, and the guards who followed Levi drew their daggers and walked forward, surrounding Spartacus. Slave, what are you doing? Do you want to assassinate the young master? A centurion said coldly. Spartacus, you are crazy, don't do this, Quintus said anxiously. He must not make any irrational moves, otherwise it will implicate him. Looking at the dagger pointed at him, Spartacus finally calmed down. He was not a fool, on the contrary, he was very smart and soon realized that this was a conspiracy of Cinna's. He raised his hands and said to Levi, I'm sorry, I was a little excited just now, I apologize to you. The centurion said to Levi, he is too dangerous, I think it's better not to have too much contact with him. No, he is my friend, I believe he will not hurt me. Levi shook his head. Spartacus was his idol, so he would not listen to the centurion's advice. He was just excited for a while. Thank you for your kindness. Sarah immediately hit the snake with the stick and made a statement about the matter. The centurion looked helpless, but he did not retreat, but stood behind Levi. If Spartacus dared to do anything excessive, he would immediately draw his dagger. Did the lady really agree to your request? Sarah asked in a trembling voice. Yes, we can get married on a good day. The lady praised my behavior and praised me for being a passionate person. A devilish smile appeared on Cinna's face. I will never agree, I already have a husband, Spartacus, and the lady knows it. Sarah said angrily, remember that you are just a slave, and it is up to the lady to decide who you will marry. And how can Spartacus be compared with me? The lady wants you to have a good home, and you must understand the lady's painstaking efforts, Cinna said. Chapter 288 Utilization. I am indeed a slave, but I am General Levi's slave, not Madam's. If you want to marry me off, you need the general's consent. Look carefully at the letters on the top, it's LPL. Sarah pointed at the collar and said. Cinna couldn't help but frowned. There is not much difference between them. I believe Madam can make this decision. No, there is a difference. I will personally ask Madam to meet me. If Madam must marry me off to you, I would rather die than obey. Sarah said. Little Levi, please help me, Spartacus said at this time. Yes, little master, please make the decision for me, Sarah also said. Little Levi bit his finger. He didn't quite understand what they were talking about. Cinna had a good relationship with him and often took him to various places to play. He also liked Spartacus very much, which really made him embarrassed. Sarah, I really love you, why don't you understand? Cinna didn't argue, but said with a face full of affection. This made the slaves around them extremely envious. Why didn't a civilian tribune confess to them, so that they could escape from the sea of suffering? Even Quintus and his wife felt that Cinna was true love. It took great courage to marry a slave as Cinna's wife. Stop pretending here. Do you think I don't know who you are? Sarah was a little furious. She didn't expect Cinna to be such a shameless person. Cinna showed a faint smile on his face. Now you are in my hands again. He looked at Spartacus proudly. Did you see it? Your wife is about to be played by me. Spartacus looked at Cinna viciously. If eyes could kill, Cinna would have died countless times. Little Levi's eyes turned. How about this? I tell my mother about this. I don't quite understand what you said. Well, then I will go to ask my wife. Sarah thought for a while and said, in the final analysis, this matter still has to start with Amelia. If she really wants to betroth herself to Cinna, she may have to find a way to save herself. Spartacus, you were really great in the last game. I have some questions to ask you, little Levi said. No problem, Spartacus said with a forced smile. He still had a good impression of little Levi. Then little Levi asked him about fencing, and Spartacus patiently answered him. Cinna looked at Spartacus with a sneer on his face, and then spoke tenderly to Sarah. There were countless slaves around who regarded him as a Prince Charming, but Sarah was so angry that her face turned blue. Quintus, I will go to Rome to study in 2 days. Can you hold a private gladiator competition for me today? Little Levi said. Of course there is no problem with this. Your request is my will, Quintus said happily. He was not afraid of little Levi asking, but was afraid that he would not ask, so Quintus called some gladiators and asked them to line up in order. They were all wearing shorts, with bronze skin and developed muscles, just like a group of bodybuilders. They are the strongest gladiators under my command. His name is Gannicus, a brave general under my command, and he is very powerful. His name is Castus, the champion of Capua in the past 2 years. His name is Crus, a recent rising star, and his performance is very eye-catching. His name is Enomamus. In order to make Levi happy, Quintus called all his strongest gladiators over. Levi looked at them excitedly. He knew all the gladiators under Quintus. He even argued with his friends about who was stronger. "Do you want to choose who to duel?" Quintus said with a smile. "What happened? Why did you call us here?" Curius said to Spartacus. "Levi wants to watch us fight. You should try your best to perform and make him happy. Maybe he will let you go free." Spartacus whispered. "It's him." Curius smiled. He didn't expect to meet the general's son again. He knew that Spartacus was right. With the power of the Levi family, it was just a matter of words to let anyone go free. Quintus would never dared to stop him. "If we are challenged to fight, you must cooperate with me and let me show my skills." Curius said. "No problem, but I won't let you win," Spartacus said. Curius smiled, and the two of them gently bumped their fists. What he didn't know was that their behavior had been seen by Sinas, and Sinas showed a cold smile on his face. He walked to little Levi and whispered a few words to him. Little Levi nodded and walked forward. He walked to Spartacus first. "Spartacus, are you willing to have a gladiator match?" Little Levi said with his head tilted up. "No problem," Spartacus said with a smile. "That's great," little Levi said excitedly. "You and..." Little Levi picked among the remaining gladiators, and finally pointed his finger at Curius. Let you and Spartacus fight." "As you wish, the son of the great general Levi," Curius said. Little Levi raised his head, and seemed very satisfied with his title. Spartacus and Curius smiled, and then the two began to fight. Although they fought very fiercely, Sinas found that they were just pretending to fight, and Quintus also found it. But what does it matter? Little Levi is young and can't understand it at all. Look how happy he is when he clapped his hands. Not long after, Spartacus knocked the dagger in Curius's hand away, and then put the sword on his neck. "Sure enough, you are more skilled. I admit defeat." Curius smiled. "You are not bad either. Your level has improved," Spartacus said. Little Levi kept clapping and cheering. His hands were red from clapping, and he said excitedly, "It's amazing." "No, you were just faking it. You are deceiving little Levi." At this time, Sinas stepped forward and said. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. This was originally a gladiator match for performance, to amuse little Levi. If they really fought with all their strength, they might lose arms and legs. "Senius, what do you mean by this?" Quintus said dissatisfiedly. He had been trying his best to please little Levi, and he didn't want to be ruined by Sinas. "I mean, he is deceiving little Levi. They are playing with little Levi like a fool. Isn't that right?" Sinas said angrily. Chapter 289 Purchase. Quintus was speechless. Sinas's unconventional moves completely messed up his actions. Seeing Levi's doubtful eyes, he knew that he must not let him believe this. No, absolutely not. They really used all their strength just now. "Believe me, I didn't lie to you," Quintus said to Levi. "Yes, they did go all out," Lydia chimed in. "You just want to make him happy and think he is a child and is lying to you," Sinas said. Quintus and the gladiators looked at him angrily. "What on earth do you want to do? Are you here to mess things up? Is what he said true?" Levi said with his cheeks puffed. Although he was a child, he didn't want others to treat him as a child at all. "No, we really fought just now," Spartacus said very confidently. Everyone also persuaded him, saying that they definitely didn't lie to Levi. Sarah frowned slightly. Why did Sinas do this? Curius should be Spartacus' friend. Sinas wanted to use Levi to kill Curius and use it to attack Spartacus. Use Levi to kill people. Sarah's eyes lit up. She thought of a way. "Sinas, you are dead. Since you are really fighting, the audience will decide the life and death of the loser after the game, so let Levi decide his life and death." Sinas said, "If you think he deserves to die, put your thumb down. If you think he can live, put your thumb up." Curius felt desperate. He felt that he had fallen into a trap. In this case, it would be strange if Levi would let him go. "Please don't do this. I used to be a Roman," Curious said. "You are just a deserter." "Deserters should be executed," SYNOPSIS said coldly. Hearing this, Levi, who was still hesitant, immediately made up his mind and put his thumb down. Quintus felt a headache. He was not worried about Curious' death, but because little Levi was really angry. "In that case, Curious, you should accept the fate of a loser," Quintus said. He decided to stop the loss as soon as possible and let this matter pass quickly. Spartacus and others looked at all this in disbelief. "Is Curious going to die? This is just an exhibition match." "Wait, SYNOPSIS, do you know what you are doing? You are tempting a young master to kill." "I will tell the lady and the master about this, and you can wait for the punishment from the lady and the master." At this time, Sarah sneered. Hearing this, SYNOPSIS was shocked. He just had a sudden impulse and didn't think about the consequences of this matter. If Levi and Julia knew that he was using little Levi to kill people, they would never let him go. The more SYNOPSIS thought about it, the more scared he became, and he even broke out in a cold sweat. No, he must not let little Levi kill Curious. "Ha ha ha, I was just joking. Don't be so serious. It was actually a wonderful match." "Spartacus, you are worthy of being the strongest gladiator in Capua." SYNOPSIS laughed. Little Levi looked at him dissatisfied and said in a baby voice, "That's not what you said just now. I just liven up the atmosphere." "I didn't expect you to be so serious." "I have to say that you really have no sense of humor," SYNOPSIS said. Everyone rolled their eyes. "What a sense of humor. Do you think we are idiots who can't see it? He is my best friend." "Can you let him go?" Spartacus knelt on one knee in front of little Levi and said with a serious face. Little Levi bit his finger and kept thinking. He still admired Spartacus very much. It seemed a bit bad to offend him like this. "Actually, I think it's okay to let him go. Just think of it as making everyone happy," SYNOPSIS said. Everyone joined the persuasion team. Seeing that everyone said so, little Levi finally nodded. "In this case, let's forget it." Curious jumped up excitedly. He broke out in a cold sweat, as if he had just been fished out of the water. SYNOPSIS breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't make a big mistake. What he didn't know was that a guard had a gleam in his eyes. As a peripheral member of the intelligence team, he decided to report this to Maris. Sarah also smiled. Seeing Sarah's smile, SYNOPSIS' face looked very bad. He knew that he had been caught by her. It seemed that he had to find a way to shut her up, otherwise she would definitely report this to Mrs. Julia. "Thank you," Spartacus said. "Spartacus, are you willing to go to Rome with me?" little Levi asked. "Why?" Spartacus asked. "My mother asked me to go to Rome to study, and I want you to go with me. As long as you agree, I will buy you," little Levi said, completely ignoring Quintus' embarrassment at this time. Spartacus felt excited. If he could join the Levi family, he would have a chance to reunite with Sarah. He glanced at Sarah and found that Sarah was also very happy and nodded at him. SYNOPSIS was very surprised. No wonder little Levi came to Quintus's house. It turned out that he wanted to buy Spartacus. This would be bad. If little Levi and Spartacus get along better and better, then there would be nothing for him to do. He must find a way to stop him, SYNOPSIS thought anxiously. "I agree," Spartacus said. "Quintus, are you willing to sell him to me?" little Levi asked. Spartacus was a gift from his father to Quintus. He thought there was no problem at all in buying Spartacus. "I am very happy to sell him to you. I am telling the truth," Quintus said with a wry smile. "But your father wrote me a letter. If I plan to resell them, I must get his consent. If you don't believe me, I can show you the letter." Quintus asked Lydia to get the letter. He kept it very well and occasionally showed it off to others. Everyone was surprised. They didn't expect that Levi, who was far away in the east, had such an arrangement. SYNOPSIS breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the head of the family was wise and didn't let the damn Spartacus succeed. Little Levi didn't refuse. He was very interested in everything about his father. However, he didn't know many words, so SYNOPSIS had to read them. After listening, little Levi felt dejected. Why is this happening? If it was someone else's order, he wouldn't be afraid. But that was his father whom he admired very much, so he thought it was better to listen. In the end, he could only leave here with SYNOPSIS and others. Before leaving, Sarah smiled like a flower on her face. She decided to find an opportunity to negotiate terms with Senas. Chapter 290. The Maccabees. Damascus, an extremely ancient city, is one of the oldest inhabited cities in the world. It is close to Mount Lebanon and is located in an oasis in the desert, known as the Garden of the World and Paradise on Earth. It is an extremely important node on the Silk Road. A large number of goods from China are continuously transported to Rome through here. Levi finally led his army here. Antiochus accepted the reality of the end of the Seleucid dynasty in Syria. Instead of rebelling against Rome, he chose to obey. When Levi was on an expedition to Armenia, he and many kings of fallen countries sneaked into their own land and called on the people there to rebel against Armenia. Otherwise Levi's expedition would not be so smooth. Recently, it is time to reward merits. Levi wants to canonize kings one by one. A large number of kings gathered in Damascus with trepidation, waiting for Levi's ruling. They have paid a lot, and now it is finally time for the result. General, this is a gift from Achaena, the king of the Tadmor kingdom. In addition to 300 beauties of various ethnic groups, he hopes to see you and express his respect for you. Lysis said, the kingdom of Tadmor is an Arab kingdom in Syria. There are a large number of Arabs in Syria and the Arabian Peninsula. Like the Jews, they are a branch of the Semites. The Arabian Peninsula is the birthplace of the Semites. Because there are a lot of deserts in the Arabian Peninsula, the Semites will migrate outward every time their population grows. The Babylonians and Assyrians who created a brilliant civilization are actually a branch of the Semites. The Arabs are the last Semites left in the Arabian Peninsula. They are the real natives of the local area. Their men are responsible for fighting, hunting and grazing, never farming, and some tribes make a living by robbery. Therefore, the tribe is extremely patriarchal, and the birth of a baby girl is regarded as an ominous symbol, and the phenomenon of burying baby girls alive often occurs. Levi looked at the whole box of jewelry and precious gifts in front of him, and his face did not change much. During this period, those kings were like crazy and sent all kinds of items, fearing that Levi would not confer them. At this time, a gift caught his attention. It was silk. Levi walked up and gently stroked the smooth silk, and his face became gentle. This is the taste of home. Lysis looked at Levi in surprise. No matter how expensive the jewelry or even the crown was, he never looked at it, but he liked this kind of fabric so much. How did they perform in this battle? Levi asked. Their king Azena led his people to support Antiochus and made great contributions to Antiochus's restoration. Lysis said. Levi frowned and said nothing. Whether in the Republic or the Empire, the Arabs have always been an unstable factor. In the Republic, they supported the King of Kings, sent guides to lead Crassus into a desperate situation, and now they attacked Syria. In the Empire, they repeatedly rebelled against the Roman Empire. To be honest, he didn't like Arabs very much. Accept the gift and record it in the Legion account book. The beauties will be distributed to meritorious soldiers. Arrange for me to meet him tomorrow morning. Use my money to buy this thing and make me a few clothes. Levi pointed to the silk and said, there is no reason not to accept a gift that is delivered to the door. Just confiscate it. Okay, Lysis said. Just as Levi was busy conferring the title of king and preparing for the attack on the Arabian Peninsula, the arrival of two envoys broke the peace here. They were Aristobulus of Palestine and his brother Hyrcanus. At this time, Palestine was a country ruled by the Jewish Maccabee family, a country with a very strong religious atmosphere. They had just gotten rid of the rule of the Syrian Seleucid dynasty, and during this period they were helped by the Romans, so they were extremely respectful to Rome. Respected General Levi, I am the eldest son of the Maccabee family. The throne of Palestine is obviously mine. This is the case in our east. Hyrcanus said. He was extremely fat, at least more than 200 pounds, and his eyes were narrowed into a slit when he spoke. No, you have already admitted it on the Temple Mount. I am the king of Palestine. You can't go back on your word. Aristobulus said. I was forced by you with a knife on my neck. It doesn't count. Hyrcanus retorted bluntly. Levi looked at the two people in front of him. In fact, to put it bluntly, it was a story of two kings fighting for the throne. After their mother, Queen Salome, died, the two brothers began to fight for the throne. First, the younger brother defeated the older brother, so the older brother had to admit that the younger brother was the king of Palestine. But the older brother was unwilling to accept this. After he fled to an Arab country, he borrowed troops from the Arabs and fought back, and then defeated his younger brother again. The political struggle of the Jews was often mixed with religious struggles. At this time, the Jews had two very important religious sects, namely the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The Pharisees were fanatical Jews who strictly believed in the provisions of the Old Testament. They believed that every word and every letter in it had a profound meaning. There were incredible decrees and incomprehensible taboos in their lives. They believed that only they could go to heaven, and others were destined to go to hell. They regarded the era of Moses as the real glory and hated all foreign things. They hated all innovations, and all reformers would be declared enemies of the country by them. However, they accepted some things in Eastern religions and philosophies, such as angels, demons, elves, and the immortality of the soul. The Pharisees were supporters of the eldest brother Hyrcanus. The main members of the Sadducees were royal family members, rich people and some priests. They were relatively less fanatical and lived a wealthy life. They were supporters of his younger brother Aristobulus. The Pharisees and Sadducees sometimes killed each other. The Pharisees once tried to execute the religious leaders of the Sadducees, just like some religions in later generations often killed each other internally. This is heredity. Levi did not interrupt, but let them argue. He had no good feelings for Judaism. In addition to its weak expansionism, it was extremely hostile to pagans. Moreover, various friendly jokes between Jews and Chinese were circulated on the internet in later generations. When Levi was young, he was very moved. When he grew up, he realized that they were all made up. The real Jews were unfriendly to China and they committed great crimes against China. After the Opium War, they were the main force in dumping opium into China. Their wealth was accompanied by great crimes. In World War II, they colluded with the Japanese to carry out the pufferfish plan and tried to establish a country in China. The media of the whole world are basically controlled by the Jews, and these media are the backbone of smearing China. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 291, The King's Crown. At this time, a guard came in. General, several more Jews have come. They claim to be the messengers of the Pharisees. Oh, why are they here? Hyrcanus said excitedly. Are they here to support him? Aristobulus snorted coldly, his face gloomy. Let them in. Levi thought for a while and said. Soon, a skinny old man in black came in, followed by several Jewish priests. The skinny old man looked at Levi with a hint of arrogance, but this arrogance soon disappeared. Levi was sure that he would not be wrong. It was indeed this kind of vision. He had an incomparable understanding of Jewish doctrine and immediately felt a burst of anger in his heart. A bunch of bastards. Do you think you are superior? This time I must let you know what it means to be in awe of a powerful country. Levi silently sentenced the Jews to death in his heart, but considering that he still had to conquer the Arabs, he decided to stabilize them first and deal with them after dealing with the Arabs. Respected Priest John, how have you grown? Hyrcanus said. I came to see General Levi for something. The skinny old man said with a smile, but there was a trace of pity in his eyes. I persuaded you to come with me at the beginning, but you didn't want to. You must have had a hard time on the way, Hyrcanus said with extraordinary concern. John waved his hand to stop him from talking. Respected General Levi, I want to ask you for help with something. John's tone was respectful with a hint of arrogance, which made Levi even more unhappy, so he looked at him coldly. We Pharisees think Hyrcanus is not suitable to be the king of the Jews. John quickly noticed the change in Levi's expression, and the arrogance immediately disappeared, and he bent down deeply. Hyrcanus was shocked, but Aristobulus was overjoyed. Could it be that the Pharisees were going to support him, so he would definitely win? Why? Levi asked. Because the Maccabees are not descendants of King David, They are simply usurping the throne of the Jews. Only those with the blood of King David can become the king of the Jews. This is God's will, the only correct truth in the world. John said somewhat fanatically. Aristobulus and Hyrcanus looked at John in shock. How could this happen? They thought that the Pharisees just changed their support for one person, but they didn't expect that they would actually replace the entire Maccabee family. This was simply a fantasy. John, you can't be like this. We, the Maccabees, led the Jews to resist the evil rule of Syria and made great contributions to the Jews. It is only natural for us to become the king of the Jews. Aristobulus said angrily. No, you, the Maccabees, are just usurping the throne. You have violated the teachings of Judaism. Only King David was blessed by the Lord, and you were not, so you are not worthy of being the king of the Jews. John said. The brothers were furious. Their Maccabee family had been the rulers of the Jews for so many years, but they didn't expect that the Pharisees would say that they had usurped the throne. These fanatical pious people were really hateful. So the three of them quarreled again, and Levi watched it all with interest. It must be said that the Jews are a religious country, and religion is completely justified in intervening in politics. Moreover, the brain circuits of some pious people are completely different from those of ordinary people. Even when Israel was on the verge of extinction in later generations, some extremely pious people in the country still refused to serve in the military, believing that serving in the military was against the doctrine, so it was impossible to reason with those fanatics. The three quarreled for a long time without any results, and finally they could only let Levi make the decision. Levi rolled his eyes, coughed lightly and said, "How about this? I will use troops against the Arabs recently. You should keep peace first and don't fight each other. How about I make a decision for you when I come back?" The three looked at each other and could only nod and agree helplessly. Although Levi did not favor them, at least he did not help their enemies. After the three left, Levi began to think about how to deal with the Arabs. He was not worried about Palestine. That was the meat on his lips, and he couldn't run away. What he didn't know was that after leaving Damascus, Aristobulus immediately returned to Jerusalem overnight. Without the support of the Pharisees, his brother's strength would definitely plummet. He just took the opportunity to occupy the entire Palestine. By then, the rice was cooked, and Levi had no choice but to admit that he was the king of the Jews. In a palace, Levi sat on the throne in a silk dress. A large number of kings stood on both sides. Today was the day when Levi would canonize the king, which would determine their future fate. They all looked at Levi with flattering eyes. If kneeling and licking could exchange for the throne, I believe many people would not mind doing so. Levi glanced at them lightly. Rome's way of expansion has always been to find allies, and when those allies make mistakes, they will annex them, then look for more allies, and so on. This is completely different from the East. To be honest, his way of expansion is a bit radical and does not conform to the traditional way of Rome. This would make Rome's border unstable, so he decided to appoint some kings to appease their emotions. If they dared to rebel, they would be completely wiped out at that time. Antiochus. Livius picked up a piece of True God paper and said. Antiochus immediately stepped forward and knelt, then looked at Livius with hope. In view of your meritorious service in the process of resisting Armenia, I appoint you as the Prince of Syria, and your fiefdom is Antiochus and the surrounding 5 Roman miles. You can collect taxes from Antiochus, but you must obey the orders of the governor of Syria. Livius said, Thank you, great General Livius. You are the greatest Roman general in the world. May the true God bless you, Antiochus said hurriedly, and kissed the tip of Livius's shoe. At this time, his mood was extremely complicated. He was a little disappointed to be demoted from a king to a prince and have a boss, but he finally had a fiefdom, and it was Antiochus, the royal city of Syria. Only he knew the taste of it. Azina, Livius said. At this time, a bearded Arab knelt down and said with a simple and honest face, Great General Levi, Akhina will accept the title. Levi glanced at him indifferently. He did not think he was a simple and honest guy. In view of your merits in the process of resisting Armenia, I will enthrone you as the king of Tadmor, and the fiefdom will remain unchanged. But you need to obey the orders of the governor of Syria. Levi said. Thank you, great General Levi. You will always be the most respected person in the kingdom of Tadmor. Akhina was overjoyed and kissed the tip of Levi's shoe. Chapter 292 Drought. His interests were not harmed, and he just changed his allegiance, which was much better than Antioch. One king after another came forward to be crowned. Their territories were basically greatly reduced, but it was much better than getting nothing before. Looking at the kings with complicated expressions, Levi ended the ceremony of enthronement. In the military camp in Damascus, Levi called all the generals to hold a military meeting. The Arab coalition forces that attacked Syria, in addition to some Arab tribes and small countries, the most powerful is the Nabatean kingdom. Akhina personally introduced Levi. The Nabatean kingdom is located at the junction of Syria and the Arabian Peninsula. Because it is located in the desert, it is very difficult to attack. After listening to the introduction, Levi had a headache. The desert area is a restricted area for humans. It is not easy to attack the Arabs in the desert. How many troops can they mobilize at most? Levi asked. All Arab men are warriors. They can gather an army of about 40,000 at most. Akhina said. Levi finally breathed a sigh of relief. After all, the desert has a poor population carrying capacity. Although their territory is not small, it is already good to be able to gather 40,000 troops. Finally, they don't have to face an army of 300,000. This time it should be an easy journey to beat the weak. The only thing to pay attention to is the special environment of the desert. If the general intends to attack them, I am willing to be the general's guide in person. Akhina said flatteringly. We'll talk about this later. Levi shook his head. He was not confident that Akhina would be a guide. What if he led the army into a dead end? Akhina was stunned and didn't take it to heart. Time flies, and 2 months have passed in a blink of an eye. The scorching sun hung high in the sky. Memmius looked at the dry land in a daze. Not a drop of rain had fallen since the spring plowing. The land was cracked, like an ugly scar on the earth, although he and 2 slaves kept carrying water to the field. Except for a small piece of land, all other wheat seedlings had died. The people in the village discussed all this anxiously. If nothing unexpected happens, this will be another disaster year, and many people will have nothing to harvest. Although the Memmius family can harvest a little, it is simply a drop in the bucket for a family of 8. Memmius considers himself a very knowledgeable person and knows the importance of education. Therefore, all 3 children were sent to school for him. But this cost him a lot of money. In addition, his daughter, who was just born a few years ago, suffered a serious illness, which almost exhausted his savings. When he thought of the 8 hungry mouths at home and that he could hardly get any income within a year, Memmius felt a little panicked. This made him miss his life in Longcheng. Although the training was a little hard at that time, he was provided with food and accommodation, and the income was pure profit, which was much better than relying on the weather to eat and do farm work. After returning home, Fabia had prepared a meal for him. The steaming hot food made the whole house like a steamer, which made Memmius lose his appetite. Several children were noisy, making the house full of vitality. If it were in the past, Memmius would have loved to see this scene, but today he felt inexplicably irritated. Little Memmius drooled as he looked at the food. He was 14 years old this year, and it was the time for him to grow up. Over the years, he had grown to almost 1.7 meters tall. As he not only practiced martial arts, but also had to do farm work, his stomach had long been growling with hunger. However, due to his father's authority, he could only stare at the food. Memmius was the one who had the final say at home. No one could eat without him saying so. Let's eat, Memmius said. Little Memmius cheered and immediately started eating a plate of pasta. This kind of food from Dragon City has become more and more popular recently and has spread widely. The 2 slaves also ate quickly. Recently, not much food was cooked at home. If they ate slowly, there might be no food, as there were no eggs or meat supplements. They had a very large appetite. Little Memmius was still not full after eating 2 plates. When he looked in the pot, he found that only some soup was left. Mom, can't you make more next time? I'm not full yet. Little Memmius couldn't help complaining. The family is running out of food. Can't you eat less? Fabia said loudly while holding her little daughter. Little Memmius had a bitter face. The key point was that he was not full. Memmius had a gloomy face. He knew that he had to make some changes, make more tomorrow so that Gaius can eat his fill. Memmius said. Little Memmius cheered, "Father, you are really great. But we don't have much food. We still have to spend a lot of money to buy food, and we have to pay for their tuition, plus some necessary expenses. We don't have enough money at all." Fabius said, "I know this. I will find a way." Memmius said, "How do you find a way? I asked you to go on the expedition to the east, but you didn't go. If you went, you might have made a lot of money." Fabia complained. The news of Levi's victory had already spread. According to his style, those soldiers could at least get a few hundred dinars. With slaves to help with the family, there is no need to worry about labor. "What do you know? Do you know how many people will die in a war?" Memmius said dissatisfiedly. "When we fought the Civil War, at least 1 out of 5 people died, 2 were injured, and some were disabled." Hearing this, Fabia stopped talking. "Being a soldier does make money, but you have to live to spend it." "Then what are you going to do? Ask the prophet for help," Fabia asked. As a retainer of Livius, if Memmius encounters financial difficulties, he is indeed qualified to ask Livius for help. "We'll see when the time comes," Memmius said with a sullen face. At this time, little Memmius was about to leave, and Memmius stopped him. "Gaius, haven't you always wanted to go to Rome? Are you willing to go to Rome with me in a few days?" "Of course I am willing, but I still have to go to school." Little Memmius was a little excited at first, but soon became distressed again. "You have been in school for 8 years, which is enough. When I was your age, I had already gone out to make money," Memmius said. Hearing this, little Memmius was struck by lightning. "Father, do you mean that I should stop going to school and go out to make money?" Little Memmius said. "Yes," Memmius said. Little Memmius was at a loss for a moment. How could this happen? He was still young and he wanted to continue going to school. Fabia did not expect Memmius to have this idea, but thinking about the conditions of the family, she quickly agreed. Chapter 293 Crusaders. "Your father is right. Some people your age even have children. You should share some of the pressure for the family," Fabia said. Even his mother said so. "What else can he do?" "I'll go and prepare. We'll go to Rome in a few days." Memmius said. "Why go to Rome? Why not go to Dragon City?" "If you go to the prophet's wife, she will arrange a job for you," Fabia asked. "I want to find Aeneas. He is now a senator in the Senate. See if he has any good jobs. If not, I will go to Dragon City again." Memmius said. "Okay then." Fabia knew that he and Aeneas had been exchanging letters. Maybe he would introduce 2 good jobs. In the past few days, the family prepared to go to Rome. Little Memmius went through the procedures for dropping out of school. He was very reluctant to leave school, but there was nothing he could do. Fabia prepared 2 days of food for them. Going to Rome was very simple. Just follow the Appian Way to the north. If you are fast, you can get there in 1 day. The next evening, Memmius brought his son to Rome. He came to a courtyard in the Suburra district with ease. Although Aeneas was a senator, he was very short of money, so he lived in the civilian area. Memmius, at the door of Aeneas's house, they unexpectedly met a teenager of 15 or 16 years old. The teenager was wearing a white short coat, had short curly black hair, and had light acne on his face. He said in surprise when he saw them. It turned out to be little Aeneas. "I didn't expect you to grow so tall," Memmius said with a big laugh. This boy was Aeneas's eldest son. He used to have a very good relationship with little Memmius. They often played together and were considered to be childhood friends with a very good relationship. "Uncle Memmius, long time no see," little Aeneas said very enthusiastically, and then took them to his home. Memmius praised him again and again. Little Aeneas looked very capable and didn't look like a child at all. On the contrary, little Memmius was much more shy, and even had a shy smile on his face. "Memmius, why are you here?" After seeing Memmius and his son, Aeneas gave them a big hug. Feeling Aeneas's enthusiasm, Memmius was very moved. Although Aeneas was in a high position, he still did not forget his old friend. "This time I actually came to ask you for something." Memmius sighed and said, "Just tell me what you want." "Do we still need to ask for something?" Aeneas said very generously. "This year, there is a severe drought in our area, and little Memmius is not young anymore. He and I both want to find something to do," Memmius said directly to the point. There was no need to beat around the bush about their relationship. "So that's how it is." Aeneas thought for a while and said. Aeneas did not answer immediately, but pondered. After a long time, he said, "It is very easy to find a job, but it is not easy to find a job with a future." Memmius' eyes lit up. Could Aeneas still provide them with a job with a future? "Are you believers of the Holy Church?" Aeneas asked. "Yes, our whole family is," Memmius said quickly. "Since Levi showed miracles in Dragon City last time, he has become a believer of the Holy Church." After all, the god of war did not show miracles, but the Holy Church did, and the miracles at that time shocked him so much that he still can't forget it. "That's easy. I can provide you with two options. These are all related to the church," Aeneas said. "One of them is to go to the church's bank." "You know the church's bank, right?" Memmius nodded. "According to the teachings of the Holy Church, only believers of the Holy Church can open banks, and believers of the Holy Church can only deposit their money in church banks or banks opened by believers." Levi, who came from the future, certainly understood the important role of banks. This is the lifeblood of the country. He would not be stupid enough to hand over the lifeblood to the Jews like Christianity did. He wanted the church to firmly control the bank. "I can find a job for you in the church bank, such as bank guard, but there is not much future in this way. After all, it is not the core business of the bank, but the advantage is that the salary is very good, and you don't have to worry about your life," Aeneas said. "What about the other one?" Memmius said. "The other one is the crusade plan. The church has decided to establish a crusade," Aeneas said. "What is the crusade?" Aeneas asked curiously. "The crusade is a very important plan of the church. You know my father is the abbot of the monastery, so I know some news in advance," Aeneas said. "The crusade is an armed organization used to protect the church. It is usually scattered in various cathedrals. The church has decided to establish a legion of crusaders. This legion will be trained as a corps officer seed, so the loyalty and conditions are very high." At this point, he looked at Memmius deeply. Memmius was in a trance. He was also an officer seed of the guard. "You are a retainer of the master of the house. You have participated in the civil war and the expedition to Africa. You also participated in the last war to pacify the pirates. Therefore, you fully meet all the requirements of the Crusaders. If you participate, you will at least start as a decapitator. Even if I help you, it is not impossible to become a centurion." Hearing this, Memmius couldn't help but exclaimed, "Centurion has always been his dream. Does he still have a chance to realize his dream?" "Is this true?" Memmius asked nervously. "Of course, but it will cost a lot. Although my father has a lot of say, he can't decide everything. Many people are eyeing those centurions," Aeneas said. "Although many retainers either became elders, stayed in Dragon City, or followed Levi to the east, there were too many retainers under Levi. The positions of centurions still made many retainers salivate, and their descendants and relatives also needed these positions, especially the descendants of those retainers who died in the battle. Many of them have already approached Amelia for this." If his father hadn't been in charge of this matter, Aeneas would not dare to make such a promise. Memmius admitted that he was tempted, and at this time he thought of a question. "What about little Memmius?" Memmius said. "He is only 14 years old this year, not yet an adult." "Don't worry about that. My father has proposed to set up a juvenile officer corps to let the descendants of some of the dead retainers join it, and then let him join together," Aeneas said. Chapter 294 The Devout. "That's great." A smile appeared on Memmius's face. "You have to think about it. If you go to the crusade, you may have to fight," Aeneas said. "I will go to the crusade," Memmius said firmly. Aeneas has become a senator. It would be a lie to say that he doesn't feel inferior to his former friend who has grown to this point. Now an opportunity is in front of him, and Memmius decided to take a chance. It's a good choice. The crusade has already started preparations, but it has not been announced yet. "You will live in Rome for a while recently. I have something good to introduce to you," Aeneas said. "What is it?" "Recently, little Levi is studying in Rome with Cicero. The head of the family asked my second son to spend more time with him when he is free. When the time comes, I will ask him to introduce little Memmius to him," Aeneas said in a low voice. Memmius' eyes lit up. and then he looked at him excitedly. Aeneas, thank you so much. He knew how precious this opportunity was. It was something that many people would not be able to get. Haha, what's there to thank each other for? Aeneas said with a big laugh. A few days later, Memmius returned to his hometown. Although the drought in the fields was even worse, he felt that the sun was so bright. Where's Gaius? Why did you come back alone? Fabia asked. He stayed in Rome for the time being, which is a good thing, Memmius said with a smile. Then he told Fabio what happened in Rome. That's great. I didn't expect that he could know young Master Levi. We really have to thank Aeneas and his family. May God bless them. Fabio made a cross devoutly. Indeed, he is indeed a good man, Memmius said. Can the crusade be settled? Aeneas said it shouldn't be a big problem. Memmius had a smile on his face that he couldn't hide. At this moment, he was extremely eager for the position of centurion. Only when he lost it did he know how precious it was. Then let's celebrate. I'll prepare a feast for you, Fabia said. Okay, all this is the gift of the true God, Memmius said devoutly. The crisis at home was completely resolved, and the yard was filled with laughter again. But Memmius was not as relaxed as them. He knew that some people would be very dissatisfied with him and would keep staring at and pursuing his previous behavior. He remembered Aeneas's advice that he must be pious, which is the best weapon to fight against other people's doubts. He pondered for a while and called 2 slaves in the house. You have been with me for 7 or 8 years, right? Memmius said. One of the Gallic slaves said, yes, it has been almost 7 years. Fortunately, I didn't make any mistakes. Memmius breathed a sigh of relief. You are all believers of the true God, and you are also my fellow believers. I hope you will forgive me if I have done anything wrong to you in the past. The 2 slaves looked surprised. What does this mean, Master? You are very good to us, and you have done nothing wrong to us. Another slave said hurriedly, of course, this is just a lie. Although the average family in Rome is good to slaves, it is not very good. They are the first to do the hard work. Memmius waved his hand, telling him not to continue. According to the canon, as long as you have worked in my house for 7 years and have not made any mistakes, I will give you freedom and a certain amount of dinars. Memmius said. Is this true? The Gaul slave said in shock. At the beginning, Fabia and the others joined the church just to get 2 more gifts, but they did not expect Memmius to give them freedom according to the canon. Of course, I am an extremely devout believer. I have always strictly abided by every rule of the church, Memmius said. The 2 slaves could not help but roll their eyes. It would be strange to believe in you. You have not believed in the Holy Church for as long as we have. But they suppressed these thoughts and expressed their gratitude. Thank you, respected Master. You are the kindest person I have ever seen. No, you should not thank me. You should thank the true God. Remember, these are the will of the true God. Please remember our slogan. All praise belongs to the true God, Memmius said with a serious face. All praises to the true God. All praises to the true God, the 2 slaves said devoutly. At this time, they thanked the Holy Church and the true God from the bottom of their hearts. If it were not for the true God, they would not be able to gain freedom. What happened that makes you so happy? At this time, Fabia had already prepared some food and brought some food out. The 2 slaves did not dare to speak. They felt that Fabia would not easily give them freedom. I decided to give them freedom. According to the rules of the church, we should treat slaves well, as long as they have worked for us for 7 years and have not made any serious mistakes. We should give them freedom, Memmius said. What did you say? Fabia was shocked and almost spilled the wheat porridge in her hand. You are crazy. Why do you do this? Fabia screamed. I want to be a devout believer. From now on, our family's words and deeds must strictly abide by the rules of the church, Memmius said very seriously. His eyes were extremely hot, revealing a strong ambition. Are you crazy? Even if you become a centurion of the Crusaders, you can't do this. Who will you let to cultivate so many fields? You cultivate them? Fabia said angrily. We can buy a few more slaves when the time comes. Slaves are much cheaper now, Memmius said. Even so, you can't waste money. How many days have you eaten enough? Fabia said. Enough. It's settled. I have the final say in this family, Memmius said in a very domineering manner. You. Fabia was so angry that she pointed at him and couldn't say anything, but she couldn't do anything about him. In Rome, Men are the heads of the family, and the status of women is similar to that of ancient China. This family can't survive. Fabia cursed and walked into the kitchen. Before the meal, his children screamed and prepared to eat, but were stopped by Memmius. From now on, before eating, everyone must pray and thank the true God for giving us food, Memmius said sternly. After saying that, Memmius took the lead in praying. The children looked at him with some fear, not understanding why their father had become like this. The two slaves immediately followed suit and began to pray. Their hearts were so pious at the moment. Fabia stared at Memmius in a daze. In her eyes, her husband was so strange. Hurry up, everyone. Memmius opened his eyes and said sternly. Fabia hurriedly coaxed her children to pray. Forget it. She would not argue with him today. Chapter 295. March on Jerusalem. In the endless desert, a huge Roman army was returning to Syria, and Arab slaves were walking dejectedly in the army. After more than 2 months of sweeping, Levi easily broke through those Arab countries and emirates, and some Arabs fled to the deeper desert. But out of caution for the desert, Levi did not lead his troops to pursue, but decided to return to Syria. Are you really not going back? I don't think there is anything else. Caesar said. No. There are still a few small things to deal with. You and Lucullus go back first, Levi said with a smile. Levi's uncle Cotta died of illness, and Aurelia wrote a letter asking him to go back to take over the position of priest. Although the status of the priest is not very high, it is a good position for young people under 30 years old, so he was very tempted. Well, I will rush back tomorrow, otherwise I will miss the registration, Lucullus said. I have notified Cerebio and others, and they will cooperate with you to the fullest, Levi said. Thank you, Lucullus said sincerely. He knew how important Levi's support was, especially at this time of successive victories. Levi's reputation in Rome was unmatched. As long as he said he supported someone, that person would gain great support. The next day, Caesar and Lucullus left, and Levi sent a cavalry to escort them. There was chaos around here, so safety still needed to be careful. Then he led the army to Syria, but as soon as he arrived in Syria, he found a team waiting for him in front of the army. Seeing the Roman army, those people clamored to come forward, and some people even cursed at each other. Some Roman cavalry asked about their purpose before letting them come to see Levi. Levi took a look at them and found that there were not only Hyrcanus and John, the leader of the Pharisees, but also a strange tall and thin Jew. They glared at each other, as if they wanted to kill each other. As soon as he saw Levi, Hyrcanus wailed, "General Levi, you have to make the decision for me. My brother is so bold. He disobeyed your orders and led his army to attack me, because I sincerely believed in your orders and did not take more precautions. The despicable villain succeeded. Oh, he dared to refuse my orders. Tell me the whole story." Levi pretended to be angry, but he was actually very happy in his heart. Aristobulus really beat his brother Hyrcanus away. He finally found a reason to take action. It's not like that. They attacked my king first, and my king was forced to fight back. At this time, the tall and thin Jew, who was very thin-skinned, said that his face was very pale and looked like a vampire. But this may also be another reason, that is, strictly abide by religious rules, because Jews have various precepts. They can't eat this and that. In history, some people in the Rothschild family planned to strictly abide by religious rules, but they ended up like this. You are lying. Don't believe him, Hyrcanus said angrily. Who are you? Livius asked. Peter, a Sadducee priest, an envoy of Aristobulus. The pale-faced Jew said, my king said that as long as the general confers him the title of King of the Jews, he is willing to offer 500 beauties and 2,000 talents of silver to the general. Don't think that the Jews in history are so steadfast and united. In history, the Jews often licked the powerful countries. For example, the Parthians once invaded Syria, so the king of the Jews at that time proposed to offer 500 beauties and a lot of money in exchange for Parthia's recognition of his rule over Jerusalem. And don't regard the Jews as White Lotus. In history, some Jewish priests, out of fanatical religious beliefs, asked the king of the Jews to slaughter all the pagans in the country more than once. But there were powerful enemies outside Judea, and in the end the king of the Jews did not agree to this cruel order. General, you must not agree to him. He violated your order. Hyrcanus was anxious. If Levi agreed to him, he would be completely finished. As long as you are willing to crown me the king of the Jews, I am willing to offer double the beauties and money. Hyrcanus said, no matter how much he offers, we are willing to give 20% more than him. Peter said, as long as the general wants me to be the king of the Jews, you can set any conditions. Hyrcanus was willing to go all out. We are the same, Peter said bluntly. Looking at the two guys who were competing to sell out their country, Levi smiled faintly. In fact, Aristobulus had secretly proposed this condition a long time ago, but he did not agree, because he knew that he would never agree to make Palestine a Roman province. Respected general, you must eradicate the devil Aristobulus. He killed many priests of the Pharisees. He is not worthy of being the king of the Jews. John said excitedly. What you said makes sense. He really should not be the king of the Jews. Openly disobeying my orders is simply an unforgivable crime, Levi said. Peter's face changed drastically, but Hyrcanus was overjoyed. That's great. Are you planning to send troops to Jerusalem? Yes, I will send troops to Jerusalem after the army has rested for a while, Levi said with a smile. General, you must not do that. My king is willing to submit to Rome, Peter said earnestly. If he doesn't take my words to heart, he must pay the price of blood, Levi said. Then who do you think should be the king of the Jews? John said, with a flash of eagerness in his eyes. Of course it's me. Hyrcanus looked at him with dissatisfaction. This guy still wanted to overthrow the rule of their Maccabee family. I think the Maccabee family is indeed not suitable to be the ruler of the Jews, Levi said. John was overjoyed, but Hyrcanus was shocked. General, you can't do this. My brother did make a mistake, but it has nothing to do with me. Our Maccabee family has made great contributions to the Jews. We led the Jews to resist the evil rule of Antiochus. Hyrcanus said excitedly, take him away. Don't mistreat him. Treat him as my guest. Levi said, he was too lazy to say any nonsense to him. He was just a prisoner. There was no use for him except to walk in the triumphal ceremony to add glory to himself. General, you can't do this. Hyrcanus was taken away from here with a scream. Respected general, I know a few devout Pharisees. They all have the noble bloodline of King David. I wonder if one of them can be chosen to be the king of the Jews. John said excitedly. Chapter 296 Temple. Bring him here for me to see first. If he is almost the same, I can agree, Levi said with a smile. Of course he must make enough contributions. I hope you Pharisees can form an army and make due contributions in the attack on Jerusalem. Well, we don't have many people, but we can provide food. John's eyes turned and a humble smile appeared on his face. Jerusalem is a strong city, and he didn't want the precious Pharisees to die in the cruel siege. There must be adult men. Provide me with 20,000 adult men, Levi said with a cold face. This is too much. We can't provide so many people. John said that if the damage to 20,000 adult men is too great, it will definitely shake the foundation of the Pharisees. I will give you 10 days. You cannot carry weapons and armor, and you cannot prepare food, but as long as you lose one person, I will capture a Pharisee as a slave. Don't play any tricks on me, Levi said with a sneer. Let you pretend to be arrogant and look down on pagans. What a group of guys who have been brainwashed by religion. They know nothing about real power. John was terrified when he heard Lee's ruthless words. He didn't expect Levi to treat the Pharisees like this. He doubted whether it was a good thing to cooperate with Levi. General, can you be flexible and give us some more time? John said. Get out. A trace of murderous intent flashed in Levi's eyes. A group of shameless guys insisted that he talk to them with a knife. John was frightened by this murderous intent. How could this be? Where did he offend Levi? He has always respected Levi, a pagan. Get out of here quickly. If you dare to trouble the general again, be careful not to blame us for being rude. Some guards saw that Levi was angry and hurried forward to say. Then John was driven away from here. Looking at John's lost soul, Levi did not sympathize with him at all. When the Jews first entered Canaan, they carried out massacres and massacred many cities, and they carried out massacres in the name of God. In their eyes, such massacres are extremely just. This is the thinking of many believers. As long as it is in the name of God, whatever you do is right. Moreover, They are extremely xenophobic and hate pagans. It is only because of the 2,000 years of displacement and the control of the world media in their hands that these have been covered up. At least at this time, it is difficult to reason with them. After returning to Damascus, Aristobulus sent envoys again to beg, but Levi was determined. So how could he listen to his explanation? He just asked Aristobulus to hand over the throne and beg for surrender with his hands tied. Of course, Aristobulus was unwilling. Just like in history, he raised the banner of provoking Rome under the instigation of some religious fanatics. In their eyes, as long as God stands on the side of them, God's chosen people, how can those pagans be their opponents? In history, the Jews did this more than once or twice. They provoked powerful countries again and again under the brainwashing of religion. The Roman Empire asked them to serve in the military, but they refused, saying that religious rules did not allow it. Some Roman coins were also banned from circulation because they had the head of the Roman emperor on them. The Roman Empire asked them to erect a statue for the emperor, but they still refused, saying that church rules did not allow the worship of other gods. Some Roman emperors would be deified after their death. It was this stubborn provocation that angered the Roman Empire, leading to the destruction of the Jewish nation by the Roman Empire and finally wandering for thousands of years. Levi didn't care about Aristobulus's actions at all. No matter what he chose, the fate of Jerusalem had already been decided by Levi. After 10 days of recuperation, the army set out for Palestine. John really assembled 20,000 Jewish adult men. Although the armor and weapons were incomplete, Levi had no shortage of them. They didn't know how many Arabs they had killed, and they had already seized a large number of weapons. He gave them some scimitars, but didn't give them any armor, and then led them to attack the city and march towards Jerusalem. None of the towns along the way was a match for the Roman army, and soon he came to the city of Jerusalem. Seeing Jerusalem full of vicissitudes, Levi was full of emotion. A famous historical city. In later generations, this city often touched the hearts of the whole world. As a holy place of 3 religions, countless people paid attention to its every move. But now it is only a holy place for Judaism. At this time, the Jews are far less prominent than in later generations. They are like a group of rural natives. There are very few records left in history. They are a weak country that can be bullied by both Egypt and Syria. At this time, Jerusalem has a population of tens of thousands, spanning 2 mountains, with at least 2 walls. The temple is built on the top of the mountain, which is easy to defend and difficult to attack. It will definitely cost a huge price to capture it, but Levi is not worried. In front of the counterweight trebuchet, these walls are just paper tigers. After a long period of preparation, the Roman craftsmen set up the trebuchet and prepared to attack Jerusalem. Some Pharisees prayed. According to the canon, they had to come to Jerusalem to offer sacrifices once a year. In the past, the Jews were divided into 2 countries, namely Israel in the north and Judah in the south. The 2 countries fought to the death and wanted to get rid of each other as soon as possible. Although Israel is a powerful country, the Jewish state firmly holds the righteousness of Judaism by occupying Jerusalem, just like Saudi Arabia occupied Mecca in later generations. This rule was abolished after Jerusalem was destroyed by the Roman Empire and Jews were banned from entering Jerusalem. Lysis, call John over. Levi said, "Yes, sir." Soon John, with a gloomy face, was brought over. He had no good feelings towards Levi. He didn't understand where the Jews had offended him, and he hated the Jews so much. After the city is broken, you lead the Jews to attack the city. If anyone dares to shrink back, military law will be imposed. Levi said, "Yes, sir, General." John said bitterly. Along the way, they, the Jews, were the first cannon fodder to attack the city. Some were lazy, some resisted, and some shrank back, but they were all severely suppressed by Levi. John also begged hard, but Levi drove him out directly. This made him hate Levi so much that he didn't know how many times he cursed this damn pagan to go to hell as soon as possible. Levi had a cold smile on his face. You don't need to think to know what he was thinking. Go to hell? I don't know if I will go to hell, but I know you will definitely not have a good ending. After conquering Jerusalem, Pompey killed 12,000 people. After all, I am a kind-hearted person. I can't massacre like him, but I have to punish them appropriately. Chapter 297 Tunnel. After the catapult was ready, a large number of stones flew high and then hit the walls of Palestine. Although the Jewish troops were prepared, they were still shocked by the huge power of the catapult. The bricks and stones on the wall were smashed to pieces, but Jerusalem was a real strong city with a wall of 6.5 meters thick. It was not an easy task to destroy the wall, but it didn't matter. Levi had enough time. After the bombardment of the whole morning, the wall began to collapse. The Jewish soldiers on the wall screamed, but there was nothing they could do about it. The catapult continued to attack and smashed a gap of more than 20 meters. "You can attack now," Levi said to John. A trace of resentment flashed in John's eyes. Although it was well hidden, Levi still found it. "I understand," John said. After that, he left here, and soon, the Pharisees attacked the gap. The two sides fought fiercely, and one Jew after another fell to the ground. Some Jews wanted to escape, but under the supervision of the war team, they finally had to return to the battlefield. Half a day later, the corpses under the city wall were almost piled up into a mountain, but they still didn't take it down. Both sides were almost bloodthirsty. The Jews on the city wall fought to the death to protect the holy city, which made Levi very dissatisfied. The combat effectiveness of the Pharisees was too poor. "Order the Thracians to attack," Levi said. After 2 years of fighting and training, the Thracians have become an elite division under his command, and their combat effectiveness is even higher than that of the Galatians. The military trumpet sounded and the legion flags waved. After receiving the order, the Thracian troops immediately lined up in neat rows and followed a group of Jews to attack the city wall. Seeing this, John breathed a sigh of relief. Now they can sacrifice fewer people. The Thracians successfully attacked the city wall, put up their own shields, and fought a big battle with the Jews. "Attack! Attack!" Each shouted. Compared with those Pharisees who have not received much training, these battle-hardened Thracians are much stronger. As soon as they came into contact, the Jews were beaten back. They wielded curved daggers, skillfully harvested the lives of the Jewish soldiers, and steadily advanced forward. Aristobulus sent out one Jewish army after another, but they were no match for them. More and more Thracians entered Jerusalem. They not only stepped on the city walls, but also entered the city. "It's over, it's completely over," Aristobulus said in horror. At this time, the situation was over. He didn't expect the Roman army to be so powerful. Finally, he no longer hesitated and led the army to retreat to the upper city. "Order everyone in Galaxia to enter the city," Livius said. The bugle sounded, and the Galaxias who had been waiting for a long time immediately swarmed into the city. After finding that there were no traps, the Roman legion entered the city. At this time, some Galaxias and Thracians had already started looting, and even some Pharisees joined in. This made Levi very dissatisfied, and he didn't like it very much. But this was the custom of the Romans. The Romans fought for money. Many Romans volunteered to serve beyond their terms, not because of patriotism, but because they could get more money. If he stopped them, he would be opposed by the whole army even if he was the commander of the legion. In the end, he could only sit back and watch all this happen. Aristobulus ran towards the Temple Mount in fear under the escort of several guards. Seeing the city in blood and fire, he was shocked and angry. He knew that the second wall would definitely not be able to be defended, and they had no choice but to retreat to the temple. "Notify them to destroy all the bridges connecting the upper city and the Acropolis, and retreat to the Acropolis," Aristobulus said loudly. "Yes, Your Majesty," a guard said. Soon they gave up the outer city, and then destroyed all the bridges leading to the Acropolis. A large number of Jews retreated to the temple. Aristobulus and some Jews kept praying in the temple. "Great Lord, please save your people. The devil is attacking us. Please reduce your anger and destroy these evil pagans." Some Jews prayed devoutly. It's not that the Jews have never lost their country and history. They were destroyed by the Assyrian Empire and the new Babylonian Empire. Are they going to experience this terrible experience again today? At this time, the Roman army was in trouble because they found a large number of tunnels in Jerusalem. Many Jews hid in the tunnels, including some Jewish soldiers. The Thracians and Galatians rushed in, but were killed by the Jews who were familiar with the terrain. Levi quickly called John. "What's the matter with your tunnels? How can there be so many tunnels?" Levi asked. "Jerusalem has always had a large number of tunnels, which are connected to each other, mainly to avoid war," John said. Levi didn't expect that he would still encounter a tunnel war. It was a strange experience. In fact, not only in ancient times, but even in modern times, there are still a large number of tunnels in Jerusalem. "Send someone to tell those who are hiding in the tunnels that if they come out, I can spare their lives. If they don't come out, they will die. I swear in the name of the true God," Levi said. John knew that he was a prophet of the Holy Church. A prophet swore in the name of the God he believed in, so he would definitely abide by it. "Okay, I'll tell them," John said. Soon they organized some people to shout at the entrance of the tunnel, and some Jews listened to him and walked out of the tunnel. Levi had them taken down. They could indeed survive, but according to Roman rules, they would be sold as slaves. Levi was very dissatisfied to find that there were still a large number of people hiding in the tunnel. "John, let your people go to the tunnel to catch them out," Levi said. Hearing this, John looked bitter. The terrain in the tunnel is complicated, and it is not an easy task to catch those Jews. "I can understand that you are not the opponent of the Jewish army, but if you are not even the opponent of these defeated soldiers and civilians, don't blame me for being rude," Levi said. "I understand," John said helplessly. Levi sneered, "And let you curse me. This is the price you need to pay." After receiving the order, the Pharisees had to enter the tunnel to capture the remaining Jews. Levi looked at the temple in the distance, which was actually the rebuilt temple. The first temple was built on Mount Moriah by King David at the order of his son Solomon. The temple was hailed as God's earthly residence. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 298 Sabbath. Solomon spent 7 years building the temple, and then spent another 13 years building his own palace next to the temple. There was a small room in the temple called the Holy of Holies. It is said that the stone tablets of the agreement between Moses and God were stored in the Holy of Holies. Except for the chief priests, no one was allowed to enter the Holy of Holies. However, some people broke into the Holy of Holies, such as Pompey and a Syrian king, who broke into the Holy of Holies and were cursed by the Jews forever. Later, the entire Jerusalem was completely destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the New Babylonians. Not only did he demolish the city walls, but he also destroyed the temple. This temple was the second temple, which was built by the Jews under the order of Cyrus the Great. He not only allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem, but also allowed them to build the temple. For this reason, some Jewish prophets called him the Messiah, which means the Savior. Looking from the bottom of the mountain, the entire Temple Mount was white, with only the top of the mountain shining with a faint golden light. It is said that this was because the gate of the temple was inlaid with gold. "Let's go up and take a look," Levi said. So he led a group of guards to the Acropolis. The layout of Jerusalem was very irregular, like a maze. This gave many Jews the opportunity to hide. Along the way, he kept finding Jews being caught by the Roman army. Coming to a destroyed bridge, Levi looked down. This was a wide valley where the Jews built a dam to provide drinking water for the Jews in Jerusalem. "Is there no other way?" Levi asked. "Yes, but those bridges are also destroyed," John said. "Then let someone fill it up," Levi said. Looking at the long valley, John opened his mouth, but in the end said nothing. Levi mobilized a large number of Jews and Galatians and asked them to collect various things and throw them into the valley. Some Jews tried to stop them. They shot arrows from a high position, but were dispersed by Levi's crossbow. The terrain of the valley became higher and higher, and it was finally filled up by him 10 days later. At this time, the Jews hiding in the tunnels were also caught. After overcoming various obstacles, they finally came to the bottom of the Acropolis. There is nothing to say, just continue to attack the city. The Acropolis is much stronger than the outer city, and the Jews are just like crazy. Behind them is the temple and their children. They must not let Rome attack. The city wall was breached twice, but they were driven out by the Jews. which made Levi very bad recently. This evening, John walked in with a timid look. "General, we can't attack again tomorrow." "Reason?" Levi looked at him fiercely. If he didn't give a satisfactory reason, he would let him know the consequences of teasing him. "Tomorrow is the Sabbath. According to our religious rules, we must rest on the Sabbath," John said. Sabbath? Levi couldn't help but fall into deep thought. It took God 7 days to create the world. The Sabbath does not refer to the seventh day of the week, but to Saturday. On this day, the Jews should stop working. Since the Jews are theocracy, they strictly abide by all religious rules, including the Sabbath. Ha ha ha. Levi suddenly laughed. Lysis looked puzzled and asked very cooperatively, "I wonder why the general is laughing? The Sabbath is good. I like the Sabbath the most." "You don't have to attack the city tomorrow," Levi said. John was not happy, but he seemed to have lost his parents. In fact, he guessed Levi's thoughts. On the Sabbath, not only civilians but also soldiers refused to work. How did Pompey break into the temple? He broke in on the Sabbath. Many Jewish soldiers refused to work on that day. In fact, the Jewish nation was destroyed more than once in history because of the Sabbath. Thinking of this, Levi immediately made arrangements. He would attack the city with all his strength tomorrow. At this time, Aristobulus in the city had fallen into despair. Are they really unwilling to defend the city tomorrow? Yes. Many soldiers claim that the Sabbath is for rest. He is a devout believer. They refuse to resist the enemy on that day. Peter said bitterly, "Are they all idiots? The enemy's army is so close, but they want to rest. Do they think they are not dying fast enough?" Aristobulus roared. Peter's face was gloomy. The Jewish state was a theocracy. The soldiers did this because they had asked them to do so before, but they didn't expect to shoot themselves in the foot. "Tell them that tomorrow, no matter what, they must take some people to defend the city wall," Aristobulus said. "Leave it to me," Peter said. The next day, after breaking a gap in the Acropolis again, Levi ordered the Thracians to attack the city wall. To his surprise, although there were soldiers on the wall resisting, it was completely different from usual days. The Thracians quickly broke into the Acropolis. Levi immediately ordered the Roman army to attack with all their strength. A large number of Roman troops entered the Acropolis, and the Acropolis was finally broken. There were shouts of killing everywhere. Facing the Roman army with an absolute advantage, the Jews had no power to fight back. They not only broke into the Acropolis, but also broke into the temple. About half a day later, all places including the temple were occupied by the Roman army. Levi led people into the temple. He was very curious about the temple. The temple was composed of 3 parts. The outermost part was a 10-meter long and 35-meter wide wall. There were 2 gates with 10-meter high copper pillars on the wall. After entering the wall, there was an open courtyard inside. 3 sides of the courtyard were 2-story buildings filled with various gold and silver treasures. The porch led to a sacred hall. There was a golden table for offering sacrifices to the gods in the hall. There were 10 golden lamps on the wall. In addition, there were pools and copper pools. At the innermost part was a staircase leading directly to the Holy of Holies. Levi walked up the stairs and came to the outside of the Holy of Holies. Outside the Holy of Holies were 2 statues of cherubim covered with gold. It was about 5.2 meters high and made of olive wood. John felt uneasy. Should he stop Levi? This is the residence of God. How could a mortal like Levi be allowed to enter? But if he really stopped him, would the consequences be serious? He thought for a long time and finally stood in front of Levi. "Respected General Levi, the Holy of Holies is in front of us. Please do not enter. Only the chief priests can enter. Even I have no right to enter." John's face was full of pleading. "Asshole, you dare to stop General Levi? Don't you want to live?" Lysis said angrily. Levi did not answer immediately, but thought for a while. Chapter 299 Conqueror of Jerusalem. In fact, he knew what was in the Holy of Holies. There was no statue of God at all. "Okay, then we won't go in." "Thank you, General Levi," John said sincerely. "But in exchange, the whole of Palestine will become a Roman province," Levi said. Hearing this, John was struck by lightning. "Didn't you say that you wanted to choose someone to be the king of the Jews?" he said with difficulty. "I can make your people the king of the Jews, but you have caused great casualties to the Roman army." In retaliation, I will completely destroy Jerusalem, including the temple. Levi said, "Please don't do this." John said hurriedly, "Jerusalem has suffered enough, and he doesn't want to see the temple destroyed again." "Then tell me your choice. Is it to destroy Jerusalem including the temple and let your people become the king of the Jews, or will you make Palestine a Roman province, so that I can forgive your sins?" "I am actually a very easy person to talk to," Levi said. John smiled bitterly. "Do they have any choice? If you can't make a decision, I can give you 3 days," Levi said. "No. We choose to become a Roman province," John said. "A wise choice," Levi said with a smile. Jerusalem was finally conquered, and Aristobulus was captured. Levi appointed Belias as the governor of Palestine, and then began to distribute wealth. The entire Roman army cheered, because they got too much money. This was probably the most money Rome had ever distributed. Each soldier was allocated 2,300 drachmas. The East was indeed rich. After leaving the garrison troops, Levi ordered the army to disband on the spot, and he led the guards to Rome. He had been away from Rome for more than 2 years, and he was eager to return home at this time, since Sulla announced that Brindisi was tax-free. The port of Brindisi has been busier than before. In addition, the pirates were eliminated, and a large number of merchants brought goods from the entire Mediterranean, and then transported these goods to the entire Rome. Brindisi has experienced unprecedented prosperity. At this time, dozens of giant ships appeared in the distance. Although the merchants on the dock were surprised by the appearance of so many giant ships, they were not worried. Pirates were basically extinct. Livius won many battles in the east. The Mediterranean Sea had basically become the Romans' inland sea. Some people even called it our sea. They couldn't think of anyone who would dare to attack Brindisi. Some dock officials even looked at the giant ships arrogantly. If those giant ships belonged to foreigners, they would definitely warn them that they had to abide by the rules when they arrived in Rome and not think that this was their countryside. To their surprise, after the giant ships docked, a large number of Roman soldiers came down from the giant ships. "Who are you?" a dock official asked the soldiers. "We are General Livius's guards." General Livius defeated the Arabs and then conquered Jerusalem. He ordered the army to disband on the spot and now we are back, a soldier said. "It turned out to be General Livius," the dock official exclaimed, and his exclamation attracted the attention of many people. Although Livius won many battles in the east, some people in Rome never stopped slandering him. For example, after the victory, he would follow Sulla's example and march into Rome after the victory to become Rome's lifelong dictator. This statement was very popular among the Romans because Livius's record was so brilliant. No Roman had ever achieved such a brilliant record. Some even compared him with Alexander. Of course, General Livius has decided to make Palestine a province of our Rome. From now on, Rome will have another province, the soldier said proudly. He felt extremely proud to be Livius's personal guard. "We Rome have gained another province. This is simply incredible." The Romans on the docks talked about it, and even the foreigners joined the discussion. Their eyes were full of awe. Rome was getting stronger and stronger. Even the powerful Pontus and the King of Kings were not their opponents. They kept asking the soldiers about the Eastern expedition, and the soldiers did not hesitate to answer their questions. They even boasted about how many enemies they had killed and how much money they had earned. "You said each of you got 2,300 drachmas, someone else exclaimed. "Of course, we have conquered so many countries, and it is natural to share so much money," some soldiers said proudly. This made those people extremely envious. This was definitely the most money a Roman soldier had ever made. In the past, it would have been good to earn a few hundred denarii. This was simply incredible. But it was understandable if you think about it. Levi alone accomplished the feats of Lucullus and Pompey, so naturally he would get more money than them. "And I heard that the general will pay 20,000 talents to the treasury. This is just the gold, silver and precious ornaments, not counting the land wealth," someone said. 20,000 talents? How much is that? Some people couldn't figure it out after a long time of calculation, but soon someone figured it out. 120 million denarii, which was more than Rome's 2-year tax. Everyone was shocked by this. At this time, 12 guards holding guns walked down from one of the giant ships, followed by Levi in a bright red cloak. Looking at the familiar Rome, Levi was filled with emotion. After more than 2 years of fighting, he finally came back. Long live Levi! At this time, someone on the dock shouted loudly, "Long live Levi! Long live Levi! Long live Levi!" More and more voices rang out on the dock, and people cheered and rushed towards Levi. Levi was a little surprised, and then he fell into the vast ocean of people, and then a smile appeared on his face. "Rome, I'm back." Levi disbanded the army and came back. The news spread throughout Rome like a whirlwind. This surprised many people. They thought then Levi would not disband the army as before and put forward some excessive conditions to Rome. After all, Levi had a criminal record. Moreover, Levi officially announced that he had changed his name. His full name was Lucius Posius Levi Jerusalemus Armenianus Pontus. This made countless people feel envious and jealous. It is said that Crassus even broke his beloved glass after knowing it. On the way to Capua, the people and local officials lined the streets to welcome him, making Levi's journey very difficult, but he still returned to Dragon City. "Levi, I miss you so much." Cybele is always so passionate. As soon as she came back, she threw herself on Levi and never wanted to get down. "To be honest, there are still many things I dare not write." Chapter 300. Me too, Levi said, but he felt guilty because he brought Monim back to Rome. The two kissed and kissed as if no one was around, which made the people who came to greet them feel very embarrassed. "Hey, where's Amelia?" Levi looked at everyone. Valens, Gaeta and others were basically there, but Amelia was missing. As for Julia, he knew that she was taking little Levi to study in Rome. "Master, did you kidnap a princess back?" Cybele asked with a smile. "What kidnapping?" "Someone forced her. The king of Judea gave me 500 beauties, but I didn't have any. And Antiochus and his men tried their best to force princesses and ladies into my arms, but I only wanted one." Levi felt his old face blush, but he had to defend himself. In fact, he was right. Those monarchs of the fallen countries were so shameless that it was shocking. Some of them offered their queens to Levi, but they were all rejected by Levi. "Really?" Cybele's eyes rolled, but she still believed what Levi said. Even though she didn't know much about politics, she knew how crazy those monarchs who had lost their countries were to restore their countries. "Come to my room tonight," Cybele said. "Not tonight, I'll go in a while," Levi said. "Hate." Cybele hit him lightly. At this time, Portia saw that her father ignored her, and she kept pulling Levi's trouser legs and said, "Dad, hug me, hug me." Levi bent down, looked at her big black and white eyes and chubby little hands, picked her up, and then kissed her on the face, causing her to giggle. "My lovely Portia has grown up." After more than 2 years of not seeing each other, Portia has really grown up a lot. "Dad, I miss you so much," Portia said. "I miss you too." Looking at her innocent big eyes, Levi felt that his heart was about to melt. At this time, a light cough came from the side. Faced with Levi's constant dog food, someone couldn't help it. Levi glared at him lightly and found that it was Valens. "Master, you should go in and talk about the past," Valens said with a wry smile. "Okay," Levi said. He walked up to him and hugged him gently. "You have worked hard during this period. This is what I should do." "And you, Gaeta?" "No, you must take me with you next time there is an expedition," Gaeta said with red eyes. "Those lieutenants shined in this expedition, and how much money did they get?" 4 million dinars. When he knew the news, he was jealous to the point of going crazy. Some of them even became governors of a province, but he had to guard Capua. Only he knew how he felt in his heart. "Okay, I must take you with me next time," Levi said. Spartacus' uprising should be coming soon. He remembered that the Capua garrison had failed to encircle and suppress him. It was time for Gaeta to leave this position and go to Rome. "How about becoming a quaestor or tribune of the people next year?" Levi asked. Since Gaeta was less than 39 years old, he could not become a magistrate. "Okay, no problem," Gaeta smiled. Levi greeted them one by one, and then entered Dragon City. After chatting with others for a long time, Levi dismissed everyone and called Maris. "How did your wife know about Monim? Did that Sarah tell her?" Levi asked. "No, the news came from Rome. It must have been leaked by someone accidentally," Morris said. Levi nodded. "It was good that it wasn't. Otherwise he would have to punish Sarah. "How is your wife's mood?" Levi asked. "She was very excited at the beginning and often scolded you. Recently, she has stabilized," Morris said embarrassedly. "That's good. That's good," Levi said repeatedly. Fortunately, he was in the East at that time. Otherwise he didn't know what kind of trouble would happen. So Morris reported to him some of the conditions in Dragon City in the past 2 years. Levi asked him about Spartacus. Morris didn't understand why he was so concerned about the slave gladiator, but he still told him everything he knew. He hesitated for a while, and finally told the news that SYNOPSIS used little Levi to try to put Spartacus's friends to death. Although he was the leader of the intelligence team, Levi had placed 2 people who didn't get along with him as deputy team leaders in the intelligence team since the last pirate attack. He had no right to command these 2 people, but they could check the relevant intelligence of the intelligence team. If he missed the report, these 2 people would definitely tell Levi the news. Instead of letting Levi know and scold him, it would be better to report it actively. "What did you say?" He dared to use little Levi to do such a thing. Hearing this, Levi was completely furious. Using his own son to kill people, he was simply looking for death. Didn't he know how much of a shadow this would cause to a child? But he stopped in the end. Morris said, "Are you pleading for him?" Levi stared at him coldly. "I dare not," Morris said in panic. "Does Julia know?" Levi asked. "I don't know," Morris said. "Did Sarah, Quintus, and Lydia all hide this?" Levi asked. "Yes. It seems that Sarah made a deal with SYNOPSIS with this, and SYNOPSIS no longer mentioned the proposal," Morris whispered. Levi sneered again and again. "You asked for it. Don't blame me for being rude to you." He kept thinking about how to punish SYNOPSIS. Should he be made the governor of Campania? If he knew that Spartacus had escaped, he would surely be eager to lead troops to encircle and suppress him. The 2 old enemies got together to resolve their grievances. It was a wonderful thing to think about it. As for Quintus' family, could they survive the Spartacus rebellion? Seeing the inexplicable smile on Levi's face, Morris couldn't help shuddering. "The smile at this time is definitely not a good thing. You'd better pray for your own good fortune." "I can't help you." "There is another thing. Due to the severe drought in Rome, Capua has arranged a gladiator match tomorrow to pray for rain with blood and killing, and let Spartacus compete with a legendary gladiator. This is actually arranged by SYNOPSIS." SYNOPSIS said, "Pray for rain? Gladiator match?" It seems that SYNOPSIS is still quite jumpy. The Capua Senate debated who to pray for rain, and finally they decided to pray to the true God. Morris said. Hearing this, Levi's eyes flashed with satisfaction. It seems that the Holy Church has developed well in the past 2 years. "Okay, I will attend tomorrow," Levi said. Flowers bloomed in the summer palace, and there were beautiful scenery everywhere. Although Rome was experiencing a drought, it had little impact on Dragon City. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.